clear turn into the turn 3 Animal Companion. But since he played the thing, he had to respond. But I think this is in a pretty good position now. Now he just gets to develop the Spirit of the Shark into a potential draw novice draw turn next turn. And yeah, that just looks pretty good. The only answer for Frosty is the Deadly Shot, and like, it doesn't feel particularly amazing, the Deadly Shot of Spirit of the Shark, but he probably has to do it, and I think Surrender just has to take the risk here and just play the Spirit of the Shark.
I agree. His next turn could be pretty mental, because if he goes for Novice Engineer, even if he doesn't find any cards that he's looking for, he can step it.
What if he finds Edwin, though? Imagine.
Okay. Just imagine. I mean, he's got a pretty good chance, right? He could just go step and draw 4 cards, and then slam the Edwin for, what would that be? That'd be like an 18-18.
Yeah. The game will almost be over, but we have Frosty here assembling a pretty big combo with Timberwolf, and Unleash. So with the Rogue deck and a lot of lackeys, you often are forced to go pretty wide. And right now, Frosty has the hand that punishes that pretty big. And I think that Surrender would probably figure that out pretty soon, because he played 2 Master Skulls at this point, right? Or did he play 1? Oh, he gets the Edwin! So this is going to be a very big Edwin. You know how big it is, Derek?
I guessed 18-18. I'm sticking with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's
14-14. I mean, 4 off. That's not bad.
It's pretty good. We also see
it's still pretty big. It's a 14-14. That doesn't make much difference.
We also see that Surrender has that perfect Crushing Walls positioning, even though Crushing Walls is not in the game anymore.
Yeah, for our newer viewers, that is the card that has rotated into Wild at this point.
Yeah. Is Explosive Shot still in the game?
Yes, that's a basic card. Or a classic card.
Because this is not the perfect Explosive Shot positioning. So maybe you could argue that this is the wrong positioning now.
Okay, Andres, if you say so.
I don't know. Anyway,
I think that Frosty has more pressing concerns than thinking, he didn't play around Explosive Shot.
Yeah, yeah, probably does. So, what do you think we're going for now? Frosty's in a pretty bad position, so
yeah.
He has to be a bit optimistic.
Can he push for lethal? Like,
yeah, that is what he has to count right now.
You never, like, Edwin's 2-turn lethal, 100%, and so I just don't know if he can hit it, to be honest. He has to just hope that he hits Misha and it tanks the 14, which seems very, very, very optimistic.
He doesn't even clear the Spirit of the Shark. He just thinks that he needs the Minion to stick on board. I'm not even sure if it's correct to attack the Spirit of the Shark at that point. It might just be better to attack face.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I think that what he's setting up is that he's playing towards a potential Deadly Shot top deck.
Right.
Where he can clear off all the... Like, he's setting the Spirit of the Shark to 1 health. So he can clear off all the minions and then go for a Deadly Shot. But at the same time, he's just pushing.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely the way to go. I love using the sap as well, because I think the one way he, like, maybe loses is if we saw, double Timberwolf and Kill Command with the Leok as well. But as it currently stands, that's game. Frosty has no way back into this game. Even with the Mark Shot, I don't think he can discover anything. Unless he got... Wait, if he got exactly Marked Shot...
Even with coin Crushing Walls, he would still be dead to the Leroy.
Yes, that's definitely the top piece of analysis that this segment needs, is still great Crushing Walls positioning.
Wait, this is not great Crushing Walls positioning anymore.
Oof, terrible play from Surrender here to not play around the card that's no longer even in Standard.
Yeah. But yeah, Frosty could clear the Edwin, but he's still he's actually alive on the board, right? This is actually a pretty good clear.
He does 12. Okay, yeah, no, you're right. He is alive on board.
Yeah, by quite a lot, but I mean, Surrender does have both Eviscerates and Leroy's.
And by attacking into the Shark, it does mean that he was able to clear it off over 2 turns. This was a pretty nutty turn. Obviously, he's still dead, but I think this gave him really the best shot of coming back into this game in a situation that looked so over. Like that, I didn't think there was a chance that Frosty could even come back into that game at all.
Yeah, also Frosty play a lot into the situation where Surrender just goes for a wide board play. I don't think Surrender would ever do that because he knows that a big unleash turn together with the Timberwolves are the potential for him losing. But I think it was great recognition by Froster to see how he wins the game. And even if he had a deadly shot draw, he could have potentially just full cleared the board and leave himself dead to the burn. But at the same time, that is the only way you win, right? So
yeah,
I think he maximizes odds there, and I also think that Surrender went for a great game plan. I think he made the correct risk on turn 4 to play the Shark because he had to do it, and then he get rewarded by getting the Edwin. But at the same time, there's so many things that he can actually draw there that is extremely good in the game, with like Miscreants, Eel Cable Rat. I think it's just a very solid position.
I agree. I mean, like, when you're looking at Surrender's game there, we're getting to the point of, like, should he have attacked face on 2 with the dagger? Is, like, the biggest misplay that we could...
The
like,
1 damage almost mattered.
That's true, actually. It did almost matter. If he hadn't had the Leroy and had to have gone with a Waggle pick,
Almost mattered.
Even in that case, it wouldn't have mattered, but it almost mattered. And, you know, it can come up in situations like that. If he hadn't found the Edwin, who knows what kind of a situation he would have been in, as we are heading to a game 3 here. I'm still in Masters Tour Vegas Best of 5 specialist thinking here. Yes. Game 3 headed here to decide who will take the series.
I imagine it will be primaries again, right?
I imagine it will be. We've seen very few instances in Grandmasters of switching between decks in games 2 and 3. It has happened. I think we saw like Tice going with a pretty crazy play where he switched between his secondary and tertiary deck a couple times.
Yeah, there's a couple of situations where it could happen because you don't have any information on the decks, right? So sometimes having unexpected card could be potentially very strong. And yeah, but it's very rare, so it doesn't happen too much. But if 2 decks are very close to each other, sometimes you can maybe swap it up a bit.
Right, and that's what I'm thinking about Zalae's thinking, where he's got 3 decks that are only
who knows
1 card different. Exactly, because in Grandmasters, or Specialist in general, you are not told what deck your opponent switches to, right? You have to try and figure it out over the course of the game. Usually you can make a pretty good guess, because it's pretty clear what they're going to be switching to, as, again, we did just get confirmation they're switching to their primary decks as expected. But if you only have 1 card different, it can often be really hard to tell what they've switched to, and then if you delay, you just hit them with the Unleash the Hounds for lethal they never see coming.
Yeah, I think that Soleil's opponent just have to respect all 3 decks, because it's really just up to Soleil what he plays. I think it's very small difference between the decks. The only real difference is that they're just representing different tech inclusions. So his opponents probably have to respect all of them, or respect neither of them. So it's a very interesting way to approach the format.
It is indeed. I think that's literally word for word what I was just about to say in summary to your point there. We're on the same wavelength, Casper.
Thank you, Derek.
I think we're literally the same person.
And you beat me in Specialist now. So future world champion.
Thanks for mentioning it. You've fulfilled that part of your contract now. As we've already got a pretty interesting choice there that I want to get your opinion on in Frosty throwing away the Rat Trap. We talked at length about how good that is against Rogue. Is it only when the Rogue is on the coin that you keep that? Because I've got to be honest, I was pretty surprised when I saw that he mulliganed away the Rat Trap.
I'm pretty surprised too, Derek. I'm not a mid-range hunter gamer, and but it just seems like the type of card that is just super annoying for the Rogue to deal with. And at the same, like we don't really, there's no real play on 2 for hunter most of the time, anyways.
Right.
So it just seems like a good thing to have, maybe.
I can kind of see what he's going for, because if he goes Vicious Scalehide, just plays it on 2, he's hard mulliganing for the Dire Frenzy, I think, right? Because if he goes Scalehide on 2 and it doesn't die, and then he goes Coin Frenzy, that's like the uber nuts. Like that's such a good curve for him that Surrender really struggles to come back from.
Yeah, he's trying to play towards his aggressive curves and don't play too reactive towards what Surrender could do.
That's fair.
A Rat Trap is very annoying for the Rogue a lot of the time, but when he's on the play, there's a lot of the time where it's just not very annoying also, where he can just play out his stuff on curve, and the Rat Trap is pretty slow if it doesn't do anything about your opponent plays. So I see where Frosty is coming from, but I'm not sure if it's correct.
I'm not sure if it's correct either. Speaking of not being sure if it's correct, I'm interested by Surrender's line of play as well, where he played the the Cable Rat on 2, but then Shadow stepped it back immediately, and at that point he didn't even have the SI7 agent in hand. Like, I'm not sure what he was trying to move towards on turn 3 that warranted stepping the Rat on 2. Like, unless he's playing to the top deck of
SI or Miscreant?
SI or Miscreant, yeah. Or like Spirit of the Shark on turn 4?
Where's the Shadow Step?
Good question!
Imagine.
He used it already! That's where the Shadow Step is. He didn't play around the out of hitting exactly Edwin Van Cleef off of the Evolve. That would have been insane, dude. Imagine if that... I mean, well, it would have been value traded by the scale height, I guess.
Yeah, it wouldn't really work. But yeah, it's cool. I don't know, Surrender is not very often a good start to this game either. It feels like he's just falling a bit behind. And the hover pickup here is not really one he's not wants to see here. He wants to get something very big to just contest the board.
Yeah. And having to sacrifice off the Vicious Scale Height is pretty sad, but he hasn't found the Dire Frenzy, so he's got to make do.
He has to do what he has to do to make hover push face.
Sometimes it just be that way.
Yep, that's just how it is. Gotta go face. But he gets punished a bit here by
I mean, this is a very easy turn for Surrender.
Oh, that's insane. That's actually so good. The Life Drinker now broke.
Dude.
Life Drinker.
That's insane.
Life Drinker together with
full.
Yeah, Life Drinker together with Shark now is like Reno, basically.
That heals for 12 with one Life Drinker.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's also just super sticky minion.
This is the nightmare for Frosty.
I don't think the heal matters that much right now, but the fact that
it does.
It's just an annoying minion.
But I mean, obviously, Surrender's not close to lethal at the moment, or close to dying, sorry, at the moment. But it just shuts off the aggressive game plan for Frosty. He cannot go for lethal. He has to go for board control to win this game. Which he can do because he's got Master's Call, but it's tough.
Yeah. He just waits a bit with the Life Trigger. Doesn't see the necessity to play it right now. He can just play it a bit slower with the Henchclan Burglar because he doesn't. It's very unlikely for Frosty to actually be able to kill the 1/2 anyway, so you can just wait a bit with it, and you don't have a necessity to heal now. This spec is a bit interesting.
Yeah, this is kind of tough.
There's some consideration for Power of Creation being there's a big card to play later.
It can get some very strong
There's also some
defensive
consideration
tools.
for Earthshock, and there's even some considerations for the Totemic Might.
What? You pick the Might for the combo?
For the combo purposes, yeah.
If you pick you never pick the Might. You never pick the Might.
You always pick the Might and top deck Edwin. Yeah, he's probably going to go. I think he's going to go for the Earthshock for the utilization.
I think he's likely to go Earthshock as well.
Because he has a lot of value in his hand right now.
I've got to be honest, I thought he was going to go for the Totemic Might. I was like, it's happening, dude. I'm going to look like an idiot.
It was never the Totemic Might. So, Surrender got quite ahead on board now, so it's a bit difficult for Frosty to get behind. Last game he get ahead. I mean, last game he had the Unleashed double Timberwolf combo, which is probably the way to win the matchup because it's such a powerful turn.
It really is.
But that game
he's forced to use it, right?
That game Surrender did have the powerful Edwin, so that wasn't really that efficient for him. And this game we see that he's just falling so behind and he doesn't have the Timberwolf, so he just has to play it aggressively and try to get back as soon as possible here. And Surrender will just keep on pushing, and playing Blink Fox together with SI this turn seems very strong.
Yep, seems good to me to see what you get first, if there's any better options. That's not, I mean, with the Crystal Smith Kangle, that's not that bad for a burst of 10 healing. Oh, sorry, 8 healing should he need it.
A burst of 8 healing, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's got so much healing anyway, like with the Life Drinker as well. Surrender never needs this. All he needs to make sure is that he doesn't run out of value, right? Because if he runs out of things to play...
Or pressure, rather. I think that if he just keeps on having consistent pressure and Frosty is 2 behind, Frosty will eventually lose here.
That's
because
fair.
The way Frosty wins now, I feel like if Surrender just keeps on having the pressure, it's going to be super hard for Frosty to win unless he gets to the Soldier. So Surrender just wants to keep on the pressure. He ordered his Soul 1 Unleash now, so he's feeling a bit safer against the potential Timberwolf Unleash power.
That's true. I mean, I guess I was thinking that for Frosty to win this game, like getting back on board is a prerequisite that has to happen. But wow, Spirit of the Shark, just means the amount of stuff that Surrender can throw on board is just not likely to stop anytime soon.
It might be you want to wait a turn with the Spirit of the Shark. Go
Just
for
to
the
go
Henchland Burglar
Shark
this
Burglar.
turn.
Oh, you think you go Burglar this turn?
Yes. I think I would probably like the Burglar this turn, and then we go Spirit of the Shark the next turn.
I'm
Just
such a greedy Hearthstone player, Hunter. It's like,
Well, I don't even think that like playing the Shark here, I don't even think it's necessarily like, if you get more value
You
of the
wanna
Shark
keep
if you
the
play it.
pressure.
I feel like we get more value of the Shark if we play it next turn because
That's
we give
fair.
ourselves multiple draws and getting more battle cries, and also the Shark has a stealth minion, right? One more turn.
yeah.
And I don't think the extra battle cry from the Henchland Burglars matters too much.
That's fair.
I just think this is a better sequence.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the fact that Burglar can't get you minions to play does mean it doesn't give you that much actual value in terms of development.
Yeah. Also, this is just more pressure right now.
Yes, yeah, which, as you said, is very important.
We currently have 10 burst damage from hand, so we have lethal next turn if Frosty passed.
Okay. I mean, I don't think that's going to happen. I think Frosty has some pretty powerful plays that he can go for on this turn. And the next turn's even, like... Actually, how does he approach this? Because, like, he obviously really wants to hit Dire Frenzy on the Vicious Scalehide at this point. And therefore, I think he's going for the Master's Call first, even though Springport Dire Frenzy was an option on this turn, and then lead up to draw it again with Dire Frenzy.
Yeah, I think
But he doesn't even get it.
I think Frosty is trying to set up for a combo turn and playing a bit ambitious here, because he feel that he just has to combo it to get out of the game, but it's just a very hard position now.
It's super tough.
Yeah.
And like his thinking, in my opinion, his thinking was very clear that he had to go for Scalehide plus Dire Frenzy on the following turn to get back in the game. Or at the very least, that was his strongest play that he could set up for.
Yes, I agree. So from Surrender's perspective now is a very good potential turn to develop the Spirit of the Shark, I think. But
True.
is there anything better? I think you always want to develop the Spirit of the Shark here. Pretty sure.
In combination with
The
what
Drinker.
I
I would
over the Blink Fox?
it might be that you want to go for the Blink Fox together with the Earthshock. I don't think
Yeah.
that's too bad because you also you just get push more damage.
I think I like this more. It develops the same board and it gives you more flexibility next turn.
Yes. Yeah, I like this conclusion by Surrender also.
Those aren't bad.
Because the heal doesn't matter at all, and the Spirit of the Shark basically always lives, so you get the
Yes, yeah,
value
yeah.
of next turn anyways. So what is this that just does is that it's just more tempo and also one less random card for your opponent to just randomly do something dumb.
Pretty huge top tech though for Frosty. Being able to find the Vicious Scalehide means if he gets a lucky couple of draws off the top, being able to find a tracking or the buffed up Vicious Scalehide itself, he could be in a situation where he can start to stabilize this game. It's tough but possible. Like that's the draw that pulls him back in
He's
this game.
really close to being that.
Right.
It's 2 off.
Which means this was the card he had to find. Wait, it's 6 and 10?
Is it 2 off? I mean now it's not the same. How much is it now?
I think it was 3 off.
No, it was 2 off.
Oh, was it 2 off? Okay.
Now it's 3 off. Right?
That's what I counted. Yes. And now it's 4 off, I believe.
No, now it's 3 off.
He's got Life Drinker for 6, Eviscerate up to 10, Bomb Toss up to 12, 50,
Goblin
4 off.
Goblin Prank.
Oh, Goblin Prank. Oh, sorry. I was looking at the Bomb Toss.
Well, now, anyways, we have the. It doesn't really matter.
It doesn't really matter, really.
Now we have the Edwin, so we could potentially go for a big Edwin
A
turn.
huge Edwin turn.
Yeah, this was how he won
This
the last
Edwin's
game.
insane.
Yeah.
This-
So does he want to get as much as value as possible from this Edwin now and go for the Life Drinker?
Like
Oh,
Life Drinker double Ray of Frost Edwin looks.
like Life Drinker isn't
good.
even the most value, right? You could get. You could go Ray, Bomb Toss, Eviscerate, Edwin. That's the most.
Well, I
but
think it's big enough, right? Like if he goes for that, I think it's a
yes,
14-14.
I think it's just by far big enough. So I think you just go for Life Drinker. It might be you just don't even play the second rate because it just doesn't matter. Like Edwin is just already good enough as a 10-10.
6, 6, 10, 10. Yeah. I mean, I think I like it, right? Like you're so likely to be winning next turn as Surrender. But I think just make it as difficult as possible. There's literally no way to clear this outside of Deadly Shot.
And this is also that turn he has to put under pressure, right? Because the soldier comes up turn 10.
Yeah.
And this is turn 9.
Which means it's not playable yet.
I don't know. I think it's essentially impossible for Frosty to actually deal with this.
I think you are correct. Animal Companion plus Tundra Rhino, no matter what the result, doesn't get there. It has to be Tundra Rhino, Shimmerfly, and then he rolls exactly Deadly Shot, and then from his perspective, maybe he's alive.
Yeah.
But we can clearly see he's dead anyway.
To be noted, Surrender did not play around crushing balls.
Noted.
Okay.
It has been noted. And discarded. I've immediately discarded that information from my brain.
Yeah, this doesn't matter too much. But yeah, it looks like Surrender is sealing this game now.
His explosive shot
is
positioning, though? Brilliant. Or reasonable.
Yeah. I think he's just basically sealing the game here. First I was hoping for a random generation like Deadly Shot, maybe a misdirection, Freezing Trap, but yeah, it wasn't really getting him there.
There was nothing happening there, and as we somewhat expected there at the start of the series, Surrender taking the win with his Rogue. I'm always really interested to see what comes out on top against the Hunter, because it's, like I said, it's a deck that doesn't seem to have one specific weakness in terms of tech cards or play style. I don't know, I mean, it was kind of the Edwin in 2 of those last games there for Surrender, and it could have been the Edwin in the first game as well, because he had himself a coin and Edwin hand in the first game, but it just didn't come together.
Yeah, I just feel that Hunter is this very consistent deck, especially mid-range, very consistent deck. That is, doesn't do anything too broken, it's just very fair and consistently good, right? But then you have these other decks right now with Conch Mage and the Rogue and the Warrior, which have clear power turns that are very, very good.
Yes.
So sometimes versus these decks, when the decks draw very good and the Hunter just draws it very consistent good hand, it's just not enough versus the power of the other classes right now. And we kind of see that happening in these games with the Edwin winning 2 games.
And one thing I also like as well is that with the Rogue, to me at least, it felt like the 2 games where Surrender was playing better were the 2 games that he won. Like, I think he won those games because he was playing better. He obviously found the Edwin, which definitely helped him with the Spirit of the Shark to get the victory. But I think in the first game there were some lines that we were looking at a little bit differently. But we don't have to theorize about that ourselves. We can ask Surrender about it right now because we have him on the line. Can you hear us?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you.
Brilliant. We can hear you too. Very well done on that victory. I was looking a little bit close there. How did you feel about that game in general and how your lines went? Do you think it was a well-played game?
I think I played. I think I played kind of fine in game 2 and 3. I'm not sure about game 1. Maybe I could play better.
Well, that's what we were wondering as well. We were looking at loads of different lines, like whether you were supposed to go coin Miscreant or how you were supposed to play the lackeys. It was super complicated. But I guess in general, I want to hear about your why you decided on Rogue in general. What was it about your opponents this week or the power level of Rogue that made you decide on it?
So the reason why I brought Rogue, are you asking that?
Yes,
or?
yeah.
Okay. So after the Vegas last week, I lost my confidence. So I was asking my friends, what should I bring? And they told me it's Rogue. So yeah, that's the reason why I brought Rogue.
Also, how do you feel about the current or this matchup versus the Hunter? Because we saw Stas in the last series was facing the Mech Hunter. Actually, didn't think that it was too good of a matchup. So how do you feel that the Tempo Rogue lines up versus the Midrange Hunter?
I think it's really, really good. In practice, I was more than 70% win rate against Midrange Hunter. Yeah, I think it's pretty good for Rogue.
Yeah, I think we agree as well, and we can see why with those games. But I guess the last thing I want to hear about is actually going back to that game 1. What was your thinking with those early few turns when you went for the Cable Rat on 2 instead of the early Edwin or the early Miscreant? What was your thinking process throughout that?
I was thinking like in my practice games, I didn't feel any pressure from Hunter, so I kind of wanted to play big Edwin in the beginning, but he played Huffer and he raised, yeah.
Yeah, I guess it can get a little bit difficult when they start pressuring you out. But unless, Huntrace, if you have any more questions for Surrender?
No, I think it's fine. I think that Surrender played pretty well in the entire series there. And there was just some super close turns in the first game that maybe was supposed to do something different, but I'm not really sure myself either. Like, it was just super hard. But I think that in general got the game plans correct there, and he got the win in what I also think is a very favorite matchup. So, yeah, good on him. And he's looking better now towards making it to the playoffs at a 5-4 score, right? And I believe that Surrender started off pretty poorly also, so he's making a comeback now, which is pretty big for him.
You are indeed. You got the Huntrace seal of approval, which is something that not many players have. So well done, Surrender. Very well played, and we look forward to seeing you play later on in the week.
Thank you.
See you, mate. I think Frosty was right in his video. Surrender is he's just kind of charming. He's just a very nice man.
Yeah, it's the same experience I've got from him, really.
Yeah, but that is us all done with the Rogues versus the Hunters, I believe. Our next match is going to be something a little bit closer to home for you as a true mage gamer through and through. You're back in your comfort zone with Alutemu versus Flurry as our next match. Another Rogue up against the Mage.
Yes, I believe we have 2 Mage versus Rogue matchups now.
That's right.
Close up today. Yeah.
Our last 2 matches, so we're going to have some excellent analysis from the best Mage player in the world, Huntrace HS.
Sure. All right, Derek.
Whatever I say, but it's going to be a good one.
Still lose to Derek in Best of 3 Specialist.
I did beat you in the Mage round. I'm going to hold on to that forever. That's as good as my life is going to get.
Yeah.
It never gets any better than that. But for Alutemu, he's right up at the top of the bracket, so we're wondering, can he go up to, what would that be, an 8-1 record? A very, very impressive score indeed, if he can defeat his opponent in Flurry. You're definitely not going to want to miss this one. We'll be back right after this.
Hi there, my name is Chad Nervig, and I'm an initial designer on the Hearthstone team. I'm here to talk to you about the devious mechanics coming in the next Hearthstone expansion, Rise of Shadows. Specifically, let's talk about the Rise of Evil. In Rise of Shadows, we have the League of Evil, an organization of wicked villains whose evil plot has brought them to the floating city of Dalaran. You're probably already familiar with their core team. They're villains you've tangled with before. Let's go through the League of Evil dossier. First off, in the Warlock class, we've got the leader, Archthief Rafaam, the bad guy from the League of Explorers. He's joined by Madame Lazul, the priest from Whispers of the Old Gods, King Togwaggle, the rogue, Hagatha, the shaman, and lastly, Dr. Boom, the warrior. Together, they've formed the League of Evil and have set their eyes on the treasures of Dalaran. Now, every villainous organization needs lackeys to do their bidding, and the League of Evil has the best. Lackeys are a new mechanic in Rise of Shadows. There are cards in the Priest, Rogue, Shaman, Warlock, and Warrior classes, the Evil classes, which add random lackeys to your hand. Check out this card, Improve Morale. Improve Morale is a very versatile card, able to be used on both enemy minions or occasionally friendly minions. There are 5 potential lackeys you'll receive. They're 1 mana, 1/1 minions with useful battle cries. We designed them to be valuable in most situations and occasionally awesome in the right situation. Lackeys don't stop here either. This is a year-long mechanic, so look forward to more lackeys and more cards that generate them. But lackeys alone aren't enough for world domination. They bring the manpower, but you also need a goal, a direction. Being evil isn't just sitting around. You've got to have big plans. Each villain in Rise of Shadows has an evil scheme. Schemes are spells with incredible potential, but you can't just rush into an evil scheme. You've got to take your time and think it through. That's why schemes start out weak, but their effects improve every turn that they remain in your hand. Take Rafaam's scheme. It might not look like much at first, but wait it out and it becomes a lot more powerful. So plan your moves carefully. Rafaam's scheme is effectively limited by how many available board spaces you have, but other schemes have no cap. During the development of Rise of Shadows, we experimented with many different mechanics before finally landing on what we know today as lackeys and schemes. Lackeys used to be called evil zugs. Before that, they were named Marks of Evil and were a currency that were generated by some cards and spent by other cards. We found that the requirement to draw both pieces in a proper ratio made them unreliable and not as fun. So we turned the currency into the payoff itself, similar to spare parts from Goblins vs. Gnomes. Schemes used to be spells with random additional effects or with additional discovered effects. The concept was to make an adapt-like mechanic for spells, but it proved challenging to find interesting bonus effects that worked on any spell, and also make interesting spells that worked with those bonus effects. As you've probably already guessed, the villains we'll meet in Rise of Shadows will be back in new different forms. But I have one more exciting set of cards to share with you today. Callback cards. Each evil villain has brought a card with them that harkens back to the set they were originally from. Each of these reuses a previous mechanic. We've already revealed Madame Lazul's callback card, Forbidden Words, which is a throwback to the forbidden cards from Whispers of the Old Gods. Now, let's see what Dr. Boom is bringing to the Rise of Shadows. A new Omega card, Omega Devastator. Like the other Omega cards from the Boomsday Project, it has reasonable stats on its own, but it does something incredible in the late game. It's a great throwback for Dr. Boom. I hope you've enjoyed this introduction to the League of Evil. Talking about them does make me wonder what exactly their grand plans are.
Our evil plan comes together!
Available for a limited one-time purchase starting on June 3rd, the new Masters Bundle contains 10 Rastakhan Rumble Packs, 10 Rise of Shadow Packs, a new Stolen Thunder card back, and the Thunder King Shaman Hero. The Masters Bundle is available and giftable now through the Blizzard shop. With the Masters Bundle, you can add to your collection while also celebrating Hearthstone's vibrant esports scene.
It's Hearthstone Grandmasters for the Asia Pacific region, and we are back with another very exciting match. We have the two players right up at the top of Division A. We've had a whole tour of Division A from the very top to the very bottom so far, but now we are getting the absolute creme de la creme of Division A so far, with Alutemu up against Flurry. We're finally getting to see a little bit of mage action as well, which I personally am very happy about. It's a deck that I'm very, very fond of, and it's going to be Alutemu on that mage. He's been doing very, very well so far, and I just want to hear right off the gate your opinion on this mage deck. What do you got for us?
I think that mage in general right now is an incredibly strong deck. We saw in Vegas that it was by far the highest performing deck.
Yes.
That could be because of a lot of GMs bringing it, and that being a factor, but just in general, it was incredibly high performing at whooping 57% win rate overall, which is very strong for a deck that a lot of people say is very complicated to play, so you don't actually expect even the best of the best to play it perfectly all the time, and you see a lot of people just throw games. And also we see Alutemu bringing this, I think, for the third time in a row now. I think he brought it last week, and he brought it to Vegas, and now he brings it again.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, exactly. He's performing super well with a 7-1 total score now, and we see that he kind of has his own cool mix on the mage with questing adventures and 2 Frostbolts and a Luna's Pocket Galaxy in the main deck. I think that this is a very big hedge towards the mage mirror.
Right.
And I think he's basically just looking at Vegas, how Vegas ended up, and he just thinks that a lot of people will go towards the mage. And therefore he's running the 2 Frostbolts, Questing Adventures, and Luna's Pocket Galaxy. I think that Frostbolt is a very underrated card in the mage in general. It's just a super nice tool to just have in general. It just works pretty well with the deck. You can just clear some minions. In the mage mirror, it's actually incredibly strong.
Yes.
Because the deck in general just struggles a lot with dealing with stuff. And having an efficient answer to the Sorcerer Pentaton 2 often is just game deciding. And the one player with the Frostbolt can just end up winning the game just on the back of the Frostbolt and the tempo it provides for later.
They absolutely can. There's a couple of other interesting exclusions in the deck. Ziliax not being in there, Sandbinder being in there. Ziliax in particular, I think, could hurt him up against Flurry's Rogue deck, which we can take a look at now. Because Luna's Pocket Galaxy, while it can be very good against the later game decks, against the aggression that Flurry can provide, it might be a little bit weaker, especially as Flurry has a pretty decent anti-mage primary deck here with Walk the Plank in his primary. Not something you see all too often.
Yeah, this is Again, a very interesting build, and you clearly see that Flurry is hedging towards the mage, maybe expecting his opponent to bring mage. And he hits the mage here on Alutemu, which maybe was expected due to the fact that he has brought mage in previous weeks. And yeah, his general idea here is that he's running the super aggressive cards with the deckhands and the eviscerates. And at the same time, he has the sap and the walk the planks for the big giants. So it's going to be pretty difficult. Also, Sea Giant is actually pretty good versus Mage, because a lot of the time with Rogue, you go pretty wide with the miscreant stuff, and Mage doesn't really have a way to deal with that. So what you end up having a lot of time is that Mage just keeps on dealing with your biggest minion, but doesn't deal with any of your small minions. So a lot of the time you just have a bunch of small minions, and then having a Giant for cheap mana is just pretty solid. So I think that Flurry has a very good shot on being the Mage here with his specific Rogue lists.
Yeah, it's... I mean, I'm looking through this
He even
list
has a sideboard that is even more.
You are correct. What, the Betrayal, Cold Blood, double Hench Clan Thug, and another Walk the Plank that he can throw in there as well. I'm interested to see how this performs. Like, I'm looking through and trying to figure out what he's cut from the regular Rogue list, because he's including Deckhand and Ziliax, and obviously the Walk the Plank as well, none of which are core cards.
Yes, he's cutting the Burgle package.
Oh yeah, of course,
entirely.
you're correct, yeah.
I don't know
Wow.
exactly how I think about that. I mean, in theory, he's playing a more aggressive build, right? But at the same time, he's cutting some of the better cards in the matchup, with Blink Fox and Vendetta being two extremely strong cards, in my opinion. I think that one of the best ways for the Rogue to beat the Mage build is that they just go Blink Fox on 3 and just keep on putting consistent pressure with all right minions, and just nothing too strong, but you just keep on playing consistent minions and keep on generating value. And I also think it's pretty interesting how he built his sideboard with cutting backstabs and SI7 agents, which could potentially leave him very weak to early aggression from the Mage, which Mage is capable of. So we'll see how that goes in the later games.
I'm yet to be convinced on Flurry's Rogue deck, but 5-3 record, he's clearly doing pretty well so far. And I believe he had an even better start before starting to lose a few games in the later half of the first half of Season 1 of Grandmasters. And he's got a hand at the moment that could become very good in the future, but is a little bit lacking at the moment.
He does have the coin.
Yes,
which
that's true.
Not only is very strong for his deck, it's very strong for him that his opponent does not have the coin. So it's just a very strong thing in general in the current meta game we have right now.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird, to be honest, because like historically in Hearthstone, it's always been better to be on the play. But in this specific meta we have right now, it's way better to be on the coin.
The majority of the time, yeah.
Like, if you're playing a deck that doesn't want to be on the coin, you still want to be on the coin because your opponent wants to be on the coin. So
that's true.
It's a bit interesting. But we see that Flurry doesn't really have too much of an aggressive hand here. And Alutemu has the Luna's Pocket Galaxy, which is an interesting inclusion in his deck that might actually play off quite a bit now, because he has it on 5 and there's not too much aggression from Flurry.
I mean, we saw over the weekend how powerful Luna's Pocket Galaxy can be, with Dog having it on 5 most games. I think it's fair to say that we saw him play on stream.
Yeah. Fair.
And, I mean, you know...
And it was pretty strong.
It was insane.
But at the same time, Dog was playing a different deck.
A totally different deck, that's true. Like,
so it's not exactly how it works in the Cyclone Mage, I would argue. But it's still really strong, especially when it's on 5. And you're not behind, because there's just... You just... After you play it, you're just on one draw to just win the game, basically. Oh, but... Talking about winning the game and one draw.
This is insane!
That
Look
is
at
a
this
very good draw.
Of this. He can even coin it out. Does he coin it out or do you save that? You probably save that.
Dude, I'm coining it out.
You're coining it out?
Yes. I'm coining it out.
I mean, this is basically saying to Alutemu, if you don't have Conjurer's Calling to Conjurer's Calling
maybe don't
my
coin it
Edwin.
out. I might be a bit too hype about coining it out. Maybe it wasn't good.
How much does that giant cost at the moment? 8 cards in hand, that costs 5 mana, I believe. So it's playable on this turn with one of the elemental evocations, but I mean, you just get value traded, or Flurry just goes face at that point. Like
big value trade. big value trade.
All right.
He's going for the giant. What would have been good is that if he could have went Elemental Evocation,
Yeah.
then Giant. And
One
then,
mana off that.
and then Frostbolt afterwards.
He can banana it, but that doesn't really make too much difference.
But also, with Flurry having the main deck that he has, the Giant just gets answered by both the Sap and the Walk the Plank. So it's extremely desperate to just play out the Giant here together with the Evocation, but he just thinks in a terrible spot.
I wonder if this was right though, because given that Alutema is clearly in a dreadful position here, maybe he should have gone Frostbolt on the Edwin to save the health, ping the 1/1, and then next turn, if he got the top deck of
Ray of Frost?
Conjurer's Calling, he could have gone double Evocation Giant Conjurer's Calling, I think. Or would that have been one off? I think it would have been playable because it would have been at 4 mana down to 2, and then he could have played it with the.
I'm not sure.
Maybe not. Maybe.
And it didn't count.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
There was some consideration in just not playing the Giant there. And
That's
just
what I mean.
And just trying to like constantly freeze the Edwin. But
Yeah.
he's basically just playing from the top of his deck at that point, and he kind of had to play from the top of his deck no matter what. But
And I mean,
he just decided like a route to take it.
yes, and with the way it's worked out, it will cost 4 mana next turn, which means
He's basically
it will be playable with a top deck Conjurer's Calling next turn if he wants to.
Yes. Also, he basically thinks that Flurry going for the Sap there is just the best turn for him that he could go for the Sap.
Right.
And most of the time he has to tank this Edwin one time anyways. So he's just trying to force Flurry to just play a bit more defensively, and because he can't really do anything with the Sap. So he forces him to only play the Sap there if he has the Sap, and then he can potentially draw a bunch of freezes and get the Conjure Calling. So this could work out for him, actually. I'm not sure what's the correct line.
It was complicated.
It's difficult, you know, Derek, when it's turn 4 and they have a 12/12 Edwin on board.
That does sound kind of tricky.
That is pretty tricky, yeah.
I mean, it's a taste of their own medicine for Mage, right? Who's playing 16/16 worth of stats on turn 4.
Sometimes, yeah. True. We have a potential comeback turn now, though. We could play the Giant together with the Nova. And
I mean,
if
that has to be the turn, right?
yes. I don't think there's any other options. And if we manage to draw Conjure Calling together with a Ray of Frost,
That's not bad. He could do it, right? We could see Arcane Intellect that still leaves him the possibility of going Ray of Frost Conjurer's Calling.
Siege will be pretty good, though. Because that will value trade in the best case scenario for Alutemo.
Grave Horror.
It will value trade the Grave Horror.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any other plays here.
Well, like, he could look at AI, Frost Nova, but
We could also,
what does that
yeah,
open up?
yes. You could go for. There's another play. You can go for. This might actually be the winning play. You could go for AI and then Element and go for the top deck Ray of Frost and then Elemental Evocation the Giant and then Ray of
okay,
Frost.
okay.
So if he thinks that he needs the Ray of Frost anyways, this might just be the better order to do it, because then you have the Nova for the bigger board the next turn.
That's definitely interesting.
I'll be very surprised if it does that play though. But
Because,
yeah,
like, Ray of
I don't
Frost-
think that play is totally unreasonable here.
Ray of Frost is just as good next turn, though, right? So we may as well go for the draw for it next turn.
No, it's not. It's not about Ray of Frost is not just as good next turn. It's about Frost Nova being way better than Ray of Frost next turn.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Because now Flurry will always redevelop the board, right, and have more stuff, and you can only freeze the Edwin with the Ray of Frost, while only freezing the Edwin this turn was fine. And like you tank a bit, but then you have the Frost Nova for next turn, which is actually a comeback.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Super.
I didn't actually mind it now that I think more about it, but that is a very. You have to put yourself in a very bad position.
It's a brave play.
It's a brave play, yeah. It's not a play you see often, for sure. So I definitely see how he's deciding that this is what he wants to do.
Oh. Khadgar as well. I mean, he can't even play it with the Conjurer's Calling if it comes off the top. It's double magic trick. He could find a Frost Nova here. That's not it, though.
Yeah. This doesn't make the cut. We could potentially Astral Rift into Godfrey.
I mean, yes, I suppose. I think it's more likely that we see Magic Trick into Ray of Frost, right? And then...
Yeah.
That's the out. That's the only card I think he can hit at this point that keeps him alive. Another second one.
magic
Like,
trick.
he doesn't even, he doesn't have the mana.
doesn't make the cut anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there any? No, it's not. Yeah. This is a super aggressive start from Flurry. And with a 12-12 Edwin on turn 3. And also the sap for the giant counterplay.
That was insane.
Just very hard for Alutemu to navigate himself in winning positions.
Yeah, just everything going right there for Flurry. Like you said, the coin, the Edwin, stopping everything from Alutemu. But I mean, I think I liked what I saw from Alutemu. Like, the one real decision point for me was like you said, we could have seen the Frost Nova and the Arcane Intellect, but the more interesting play for me was whether or not he should have gone for the Giant on the turn he played the Giant, right? Because we could have seen Frostbolt and then wait and hope to hit Frost Nova off the top to go with the Giant, or hope to hit Ray of Frost to go with the Giant as well. Whereas as he played it, it opened him up to Sap and the Walk the Plank, both of which would have been pretty devastating to not being able to conjure as calling the Giant.
Yeah, he could have taken like more of a freeze mage type of game plan, because his deck actually kind of allows that with having double Ray of Frost, double Frostbolt, double Frost Nova. So that might have been the better decision to make. I'm not sure. He decided to go for a risky play there, and it didn't really pay off. But what you have to ask is that, would it have paid off if it didn't have the sap? Which I'm not even sure if it would have, because technically we did have the answer to Edwin then, because his idea is that he plays the Giant, right? It's an 8/8, and then next turn you can Frostbolt ping the Edwin, and then it's dealt with. But is that even a winning position at that point? Because then you're giving your opponent and then your opponent gets a free turn to do whatever they want, and then they get another free turn.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have to, you kind of have to just ask yourself, what is the winning line here? And because it's in a terrible position, and I think that Alutemu went for good lines, and you could argue that some of the other lines are better because they have different ways to win.
Yeah.
But it's just very hard to tell, you know?
And I think that's something you have to do with Mage in particular, is you very often, I find, have to play to outs off the top. Like, you have to know what is the only way I can win, and how do I set up for that, which is often Frost Nova off the top, Conjurer's Calling off the top, which I think maybe Alutemu could have played to a little bit more. But even in that situation, we're talking about super fringe outs to have really any chance in that game at all.
Yes. I mean, especially in Alutemu's version also, it's basically just a freeze mage at this point, where you run 2 images, 2 Ray of Frost, Frostbolts, Novas, Cyclones, magic tricks, just so much potential for freeze. So slow playing it and playing to your potential top deck freeze is a very real thing, and something he could have done, but it decided to not necessarily do. Or he did it in a different way. There's different ways you can do it, right? And you can do more risky plays, and you can do less risky plays that are both risky, but it's just super hard to be able to manage how much of a risk you want to take, because you have to evaluate your position, right? And see how likely am I to win here, and how and what risk is the better risk to take in the position I am in. And he was in a really bad position with 12-12 Edwin just hitting him. So I don't know. I'm not sure.
Basically, Mage is quite hard.
Mage is very hard for sure. There's a lot of very close decisions that, well, I don't think anyone can play it out perfectly, and I don't think you can 100% say that anything was necessarily wrong, like those turns. It's just a lot of opinions, and people just have to play the deck a lot and manage to maneuver as good as possible with the deck.
As I believe we got word of what both of these players are switching to in terms of their secondary or tertiary deck. It makes a lot of sense, as we can see here. Alutemu switching over to his anti-rogue variant on the tertiary deck. Halftime Scavengers, I know, are a card that you're fairly fond of in terms of fighting against rogue. The Snip Snap and Ziliax as well also seem to make some amount of sense to me.
Yes, he's basically just putting in more anti-aggro cards, and cards that rogue isn't very good at interacting with, which is stealth minions, right? And the halftime scavenger kind of provides, especially versus the rogue sideboard, a lot of the time running double betrayal, etc. Here we see Flurry with 1 betrayal, 2 walk the planks, right? It just provides them with a minion they can target and gain tempo off, and that is very valuable at the same time as it can do value trades and set up your conch callings. And besides that, I feel like he's kind of just including cards that you would normally put in your main deck, but since he prioritized facing Mage with his main deck and like leaning towards Mage, he didn't include him in the main deck, but now decides to include him in the sideboard.
Yeah, and It's weird to say that Rogue used to be the stealth class, and now it's suffering against stealth. It brings a tear to my eye of the good old concealed days with questing adventurer.
Yeah, that was pretty good, that card.
But speaking of the Rogue, they also have a few tricks up their sleeve in order to deal with what the Mage is throwing forward. Betrayal, Cold Blood, double Hench Plant, Thug, and the Walk the Plank added in for Flurry to be able to fight back against the Rogue. It makes against the Mage, sorry, as we can see here. It makes a lot of sense. The Betrayal can be very, very nice against those great big giant boards. But for me, the inclusions I like even more than the slightly more obvious Walk the Plank and Betrayal is the Hench Clan Thugs, because this is not immediately obvious when you start playing against Mage that this is what it would be weak to, but it turns out that Hench Clan Thug is super difficult for Mage to deal with.
Yes, a lot of the time for the Mage, the most difficult thing to deal with is just early consistent pressure with, for example, Hench Clan Thug, and I would say that Blink Fox is also incredibly annoying. Also SI7 agent. Which comes to another important point, which is what he decides to remove in his sideboard, which is Backstab, Saucy Deckhand, and SI7 agent, which is the type of cards that are very good at dealing with Mage's early aggression with the Sorcerer Apprentice, Mirror Images, Cyclones, etc. So it would be interesting to see how that pays off for him, because I think that Mage is way more reliable now to make sort of a different game plan where you just go more aggressive and play like you don't have to play around SI7 agents and backstabs too much anymore. So it's a very interesting sideboard. I'm not sure if I like it or not yet. I don't think I can ever cut any of these cards.
Right.
So we'll see how it turns out. It's cool. It's cool.
We will see, and I think this it brings a really interesting facet into this game, which is I anticipate that the real thing this is going to test isn't necessarily how Flurry's Rogue performs, but how Alutemu can adapt his Mage gameplay, because we've seen not only the evolution of the Mage deck list over the recent weeks, we've also seen the evolution of how it's played, because I remember back at the start of Grandmasters, it felt like Mage was pretty much a Slam Giant and play Conjurer's Calling on it deck. Like, that's really what it did, and then if that failed, you sometimes went for the Mana Cyclone play to try and pull you back into the game. But now we're seeing more and more players just go with Apprentice on 2, Banana Buffoon on 3, and you just kill them.
Yeah, I feel like Mage players have got a lot better since the first week. It's a super hard deck, and it's taken a lot of time for people to actually learn how to maneuver the hands that are not the giant hands, right? And how to make the most out of hands that on paper aren't that strong, and actually just making value of other good cards, which is Cyclone and the Sorcerer Apprentice, which is incredibly strong cards in the deck, but at the same time it's very underrated because of the insanely powerful giant conjurers, which is the thing that people see the most in the deck. So yeah, that's very interesting. So we see that Alutemu already considering a lot about his mulligan here. He has
it's super interesting, actually, I think.
Yeah, he has Snip Snap, Conch Calling, Khadgar, and Celiax. So
like Snip Snap and Ziliax have some pretty obvious synergy that you could go for if you're afraid of early aggression.
See, this is a very interesting mulligan, right? Because now he runs the half-amp Scavengers in his deck. Also, he has the Snip Snap in his hand.
Right.
And Snip Snap is a very annoying minion.
Yes, it is.
And it's a lot of the time a minion that the Rogue doesn't want to trade into. And also, this Rogue version doesn't run too much early game.
Yes.
So basically, what Alutemu is doing here is that he's just saying that
it's just curving out.
Yeah, he just wants to play the Snip Snap into Conch Calling and then Khadgar Conch Calling. I really think this mulligan is not very obvious at all, and I think very few players would actually do this mulligan.
So do you like it?
I like it a lot.
Right.
I think this is extremely
shows a lot of knowledge of the deck.
Yeah, knowledge of the deck. Yeah, for sure. And you also see him here just coining out the Snip Snap. He knows that there's only one backstab.
What he could also do, though, is play the Khadgar, trade in the Snip Snap, and then get 4 1/1s instead of 2. Oh.
He could do that.
Doesn't sound great, but it's something he could consider.
Yeah, he would leave himself. He would go into Sea Giant if he did that.
So basically, what you're saying is that he would turn a really good hand into a terrible hand with that line of play.
Yeah, that is the argument for not doing the Snip Snap keep, though. Actually, I mean, the Sea Giant is very strong now.
Oh, this seems a lot more like it, though. Like you said, the beautiful play of coin Snip Snap into Conjurer's Calling just means, like,
Yes.
What can Flurry do? He has no backstabs or
Again,
SIs.
this is the general game plan I was talking about before the match. That now the Rogue has a lot of more clunky cards, and it doesn't have too many cards that deal with early game aggression, like the Sorcerer Apprentice.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the same thing, where the mage just goes on the aggressor, and the Rogue just doesn't have too much things to play. But at the same time, Flurry has the miscreant here and has a lot of utilization and is able to deal with this fairly clean.
It's not bad, but oh my god, halftime Scavenger into Khadgar Conjurer's Calling is insane.
This is very good. And again, it's just,
This is actually insane.
this is also a very good example of why the Khadgar Calling Keep is so good for him, because it's not about the giant necessarily, but the half-amp Scavenger is insane with the Khadgar Calling.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible for the Rogue deck to come back from that. For the giant is actually possible to beat, because you can actually interact with it, right? And also, after you conch calling the giant, you actually have the betrayal, but
Yeah.
it doesn't really work versus the half-amp Scavenger.
I also want to point out that I really like Alutemu's trading here, because it wasn't so obvious how he did that. He could have gone all face, he could have killed off the miscreant, or he could just trade one of his minions, which means Sea Giant is not playable for Flurry.
That is
But that is a
insane.
very important minion to get there.
That's so good. That's actually so good.
What?
Dude.
Khadgar Conjurer's Calling is out.
You can look at Alutemu's reactionary. It's actually a disaster for him.
The end is in fact coming.
If Flurry notices Alutemu's double keep and the
Yes.
situation here, he just plays into this Doomsayer now, and it's gonna be super annoying for Alutemu.
I mean, I guess this was the hour.
This was very strong. It would have not been over anything if he didn't get this, but
He could even, I mean, he could have stepped the faceless lackey there to go for Togwaggle next turn, I guess.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that's actually a very good point.
I mean, that was pretty good, right?
Yeah, that seemed pretty good. Not gonna lie. So what does kill this thing now? Yeah, you should have just done that, right? Just stepped it.
Like, I think he wants to move that as quick to move towards that as quick as possible.
There's not too much that kills the Doomsayer, right? So there's
Right.
not that much consideration. Like Doomsayer almost always procs her,
Yes.
right?
Like if Alutemu goes for Conjurer's Calling on it,
And-
you're so happy.
Yeah, and if Doomsayer procs her, having the Togwaggle next turn is just...
Yes, that's insane.
You have a point here, Derek.
I finally did it. I have a point. It only took 4 games.
It was probably correct to shadow step it. Yeah, we should have shadow stepped it. But he didn't shadow step it, and
I mean, he's got reasonable plays next turn. He can still go Lackey, Miscreant, and then step the Miscreant and play more Lackeys.
Yes.
But that does start playing into opposing Sea Giants.
yeah, and also it's a bit slower, right? Being faster is the most important thing.
Dude, this was just the disaster for Alutemu.
It was really
The
unfortunate.
absolute disaster.
It was really unfortunate, yeah.
You hate to see good plays go unrewarded, because I think, like you said, the more I look at this hand or the keep from Alutemu, I think it was a really heads-up keep.
Yeah, I agree.
Still a pretty powerful turn here for Alutemu.
Oh, it picks up the mana cyclone. That's really strong, right? He could potentially go Mirror Image,
Could go
Arcane Missiles.
Does he
and
ever go
then-
Khadgar Mirror Image?
Oh,
Like,
we could go Khadgar Image.
that does play into the Rogue's Sea Giant, because Flurry is obviously
also,
playing the
also, I'm not sure about
Sea
going.
Giant version.
Funnily enough, if you go the Khadgar Image line, Flurry might be happy board looking you. Like,
That's actually true.
and because
You just can't play anything big.
It depends a bit, because right now, I'm not sure if Flurry is gonna do that though. But right now, if Flurry actually does that, it's super bad for Alutemu because he doesn't have anything big to play behind it.
Yeah.
So he's just gonna play mediocre stuff, and then Flurry just gets to develop way more than him. So he's just gonna go for the slow play here and just go for the Scavenger plus ping, I assume here. And then he's setting up a
Is he not
potential
setting up for triple spell? Like, Mirror Image, Arcane Missiles, Fate, Cyclone, still pretty good, right?
Yeah, that was
I like
basically his decision towards the end there. He was considering between this and just pinging, and then saving the Cyclone for a later.
I think I like
moment.
this. I think it sets up a lot of defensive abilities on this turn, and it sets up for Khadgar Conjurer's Calling next turn.
What about the betrayal positioning though, Derek? You could potentially betrayal the Mana Cyclone to kill both images now.
Good point. That was wrong. I mean, he had like 3 seconds to make that play at the end there. I think he's just happy he got it on board.
It was a bait, Derek. He just baited the betrayal. It was like, let's push this in here so he betrayals.
That was actually the Galaxy Brain play
The
there
Galaxy Brain
from
play.
Ali Temu. It was also, it's worth pointing out, terrible crushing walls positioning there for Ali Temu, putting the this halftime scavenger on the edge. Terrible.
Yeah. But yeah, Flurry just
Wow.
slow playing at her and
Stepping the
gaining
Togwaggle.
value.
Is this, do you like this? I feel like stepping Togwaggle is like, it's the right play a lot less often than you think. Because it's just super slow stepping a 5-5 here. I don't know, I feel like he's got enough value already, right? Like, he just needs to go towards the lethal plan. Because with Wondrous Wand, Waggle Pick, and the Life Drinker...
It does seem pretty hard to fit in. I also think that at this point, you just always make the read on the Khadgar being in the hand.
Yes.
Knowing the keep off.
No,
This is
that-
pretty
it's just
okay.
a 4-3. Yeah, yeah, those are fine.
This is pretty average, I would say.
Nothing too bad. Ooh. That's not good quite yet, but that could be a very good card
This turn is
in the coming turns.
very hard.
Because Flurry hasn't really got himself in a position where he can go for the burst damage to push everything face.
No, he's not close to doing that yet.
But how does he get back board here? Oof. That wasn't a great set of cards to get off the wand there.
Yeah. I'm not sure.
I mean, I guess he's getting closer to the burst plan with Cold
I mean,
Blood in hand.
he could potentially walk the plank everything, but it doesn't feel
I
very
think he's
good.
gonna lucky. He's gonna
yeah,
Togwaggle,
he's
right?
gonna Togwaggle again and like go again for next turn.
Does he go for another wand?
Choose soon.
Yeah, I think he's gonna go for another one. I think that he thinks that his deck is better than the random legendaries. What he could consider is that his position is so bad, so he has to go for the random legendaries. There's like
Yeah.
a couple of them that are extremely powerful. Like for example, in this situation, we could have Undasta. Very powerful.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, and that would be pretty nuts actually. Or the King Crush. Oh no, wait. That's
That doesn't
that's a
work.
Hunter one. Yeah. That would be good though if he could get it. Ziliax would be
That
pretty
would
good.
be good. Yeah, Silex would be good. There's probably some other ones that would be good too. Just can't remember.
But I think, like, as it usually tends to be the case, Wondrous Wand is more likely to get you an out.
You have your own deck to play with,
Exactly.
which is normally the better thing to do.
Especially as he's got Spirit of the Shark. Like, as soon as he hits Evil Cable Rat or Novice Engineer or whatever cheap, powerful Battlecry minion, Flurry can just really start to turbo through his power cards.
Yes, for sure. You can also just hit Sea Giant. Like, Fleur doesn't actually have too much big value cards. Because
pretty light.
he does cut all of the Burgle package, and he runs preps and such, so it becomes a bit more light. But he has some good hits for sure. You can also hit the Edwin,
Yeah.
which would be not very good because there's like infinite freeze in the deck. So, and now it's very late. So it's not that strong for him. But at the same time, he's just all right on board right now. Like Alitema doesn't have too much pressure and just keeps on developing as he does here.
Yeah. I quite like this from Alitemu as well. Like, I think that the other thing I was looking at on this turn was Ray of Frost plus Mountain Giant, which develops a big minion and could have traded some of the stuff off. But until he finds Conjurer's Calling, Mountain Giant was actually just like pretty weak to either the second Walk the Plank or the Sap.
Yeah.
So I don't mind saving the Giant for the Conjurer's Calling on the same turn.
We also see that he, more importantly this turn, did position correctly for Betrayal.
Yes, he did. I mean, that's the thing for Ali Temu, right? As with all Hearthstone players, is first of all you want to make sure you're doing your turn full stop,
Dude,
and then you want to do it correctly.
This trade does not feel good.
The Cold Blood VT.
Dude, look at this 9 damage.
I mean, is Flurry under pressure of lethal? Like, if he goes face hit and then gets frozen, I think the 2 damage he takes is fine. I think I like going face hit.
Yeah, his idea is that he's just afraid of this Togwaggle just not connecting again or something, and then he just 2-7 just keeps on going face.
This play's kind of a dream though for Ali Temu, the giant Conjurer's Calling Ray of Frost.
Yeah, he would potentially be weak to some of the tech inclusions of Flurry though, but he has played a lot of it already this game. I think he's played 2 Walk the Planks and the Sap. Or did he play the Sap? I'm not sure if he played the Sap. Maybe he did.
I think it's just the 2 Walk the Planks.
Yeah, just the 2 Walk the Planks.
Which means it's really just Betrayal that he's super weak to now.
Yeah, it's Betrayal, but he's run a bunch of cards, so that is a card that's totally in his range by this point, but I don't think you can actually afford to play around it.
I agree. He's got to do something, right?
Yeah, so I think he's just going to go for the giant Conjurer's Calling. Maybe he's thinking about if there's a better way to do it.
What else is he considering? Like Ziliak's double Ray of Frost to clear? Like, that feels so much weaker.
Could be considering just not Conjurer's Calling. How did I actually call it? I didn't even think about it myself. Anyways, yeah, he just not Conjurer's Calling.
I mean, you know, if he's seen both Walk the Planks, then having the single giant is obviously less weak. And
also, again, Flurry's deck just doesn't run that much reactive stuff. He does cut 2 of the SIs. There's no Vendettas.
That's true, that's true.
There's 1 less backstab, and we already saw a backstab this game, I think. I'm not sure. I don't remember.
It doesn't run that many cheap spells either, so your counter spell has a pretty good chance of just stopping the Wondrous Wand.
Yep.
Like, even if he doesn't play it, Flurry will be scared to play it at all.
Yes, it could also just stop a prep, which would be worse. But yeah, I think this single giant is just surprisingly very annoying for Flurry to deal with. It would turn out better the other way around versus Flurry's hand, but
yes,
he's clearly showing a lot of respect for what Flurry's potential here is. Or, I mean, this turned out better, to be honest, because the Wondrous one, obviously.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, he's clearly just showing respect to all of Flurry's potential hand here.
But now we can see some really powerful stuff from Ali Temu. He just has to sequence it correctly, right? Because if he goes face, Conjurer's Calling, freeze with the Ray of Frost, and then he can go Ziliak's in the middle of the 2 giants, right? To play around Betrayal, or the 2 Grave Horrors even.
Well, the Grave Horrors already kind of play around Betrayal, in a way.
Yes, I guess
A bit.
Ziliak's plays around it more though, right? Like,
Does
if you
it
put those in
always?
between, it means the giants can't hurt each other.
Well, do you ever want them to hurt each other, though? He doesn't have any way to chip 1 damage.
I guess.
Maybe you
Do you
sometimes
see this go
want them.
Conjurer's Calling again? I guess that can run into the problem of mountain giants, which are weak to the Betrayal.
I think
yeah.
he likes having like 1 of each of these now. Also, this is just way better with Sap because both of them cost 0 now.
Yes, yeah.
So I think it might be that he just doesn't place it in the middle, but he does have to place it in the middle.
I think I still like it, right? Because like maybe he has some way of even if well, he can't tank the 1 actually, but yeah, I guess he doesn't actually have much way to deal 1 damage because the SI7 agents aren't there.
Okay, now he gets away to proc the counter spell.
He may not even do it though, right? Like Flurry may think he's in such a bad position that it has to be Spellbender and then he hits all the spells for lethal or something. I don't know.
Also, I didn't actually get to talk about it last turn, but Flurry didn't know it was counter spell, right?
No.
So he could have taken the risk on Wondrous One last turn, which would have probably been better than what it did if it wasn't counter spell. But I didn't really look at it at all, and like the potential of other secrets.
Right.
So
I mean, there was a lot of
can't
stuff
really
to
blame
play
him for that.
But I
Yeah.
have to say, I'm very happy for Alex Temu taking that game. I think there was some very, very good plays from him there that led him through to a victory. And to be honest, I kind of disagreed with some of Flurry's lines that he was taking there. I think he could have, given the good RNG that he got with the Doomsayer, which very much pulled him back in the game, I think he could have capitalized on that a little bit more by stepping the Lackey to go for
he would have
Lackey
gotten
Togwaggle.
way much more tempo by stepping the Lackey, and then he would have gotten into a turn next turn where he could have potentially played the Spirit of the Shark and just getting way more pressure. And I think that was potentially just a game-losing play in that.
Right. And I think even after that, I disagree with stepping the Togwaggle as well, because I think that was too big a loss of tempo. And if we look at how it would have shaken out, he would have just, even if he wasn't trading, he could have just pushed face and maybe gone for lethal with Eviscerates on the following turns. That one I think is a little bit closer, because there is obvious value to having an extra Togwaggle to get another Wondrous One. We saw that almost pulled him back in the game. But overall, even though we disagree with some of Flurry's lines, I think Alutemu in general showed really good understanding of the matchup.
Yes, I really liked how Alutemu's general vision of just how to play that matchup.
Yeah.
There was some super close turns there, but the idea of just getting ahead and the conjure calling, cat guard, snap keep, and the way he piloted, like not going for the conjures calling.
Yeah.
Even though it was a pretty close call not going for the conjures calling versus the counterspell, the idea of doing that and just not conjures calling is just something that almost no one would do.
Right.
And I think it's just a super reasonable play. And one that he got super rewarded for it.
He did indeed. And I think it not only is it a good play in general, it really exploits the weakness of Flurry's techs, because Flurry has clearly gone for an anti like giant plan, right? Like he's trying to kill off the giants, the grave horrors and whatever. He's not got a plan that kills off the small minions at all.
I also think that what I said earlier might have been actually wrong, because I think that he could just make the read on no prep, because he already had the Wondrous One in hand and another Wondrous One. So he could have already played the Wondrous One if he had the prep. So
right.
You could actually just make the read on no prep. And what is it even at that point that can actually proc the counterspell? There's almost nothing.
Right, yeah.
So I think it's just a very smart play, and he recognized the position and made a play that seems pretty odd, but just was, I think, a lot better there.
I think it was, and it's showing the power of not only teching against Rogue effectively, because we saw how good, well, I'm going to correct that, we saw how good Halftime Scavenger should have been in the majority of cases. Halftime Scavenger should have just won in the game on the spot there, if obviously the the Doomsayer hadn't come down. But I think in general it shows the power not only of sideboarding well, but playing well against your opponent's deck, showing if you know the matchup very well, you will be able to come out ahead, taking a win in this, you're going to hate me for saying this, unfavorable matchup against the Rogue. What's your opinion on that? What do you think about this matchup of Mage versus Rogue in general?
It's a interesting matchups. I know there's a lot of different opinions floating around, and both of the decks have very strong power level, and both the very good draws and the very bad draws are it's just very volatile in general. So it's very natural that there's a lot of different opinions, because there's just so many different outcomes of the games. But I think it's I would rather play on the Mage side every time, but I know a lot of people think differently, so I'm not sure. I like the Mage side, but I might be biased. I don't know.
It's so hard to tell with like GM discussions, right? Because I mean, funnily enough, it turns out whatever deck you play more of, you tend to think is favored, because GMs are all really good at Hearthstone, and so if they're just queuing up whatever deck they play on ladder, they're generally going to beat whoever they're facing, no matter what the matchup.
Yeah, it's very interesting. A lot of the GMs have a very different opinions on a lot of matchups, which is, I think, a lot caused by the top tier decks now are just so volatile and so based around good draws. So if you just practice a couple of matches versus yourself and your opponent, or a random opponent, a lot of the time you just get the nut draws, which are just unbeatable, right? And I think a lot of the sample size that people have might be wrong because of just very low sample size.
Well, it's like at the moment in Hearthstone, it's kind of impossible to repeat a lot of games, because there's so much stuff that you can never really repeat, whether it's random generation of Conjurers falling or the lackey outcomes or whatever.
Yes.
Which I think is the good kind of RNG a lot of the time, because it tests how you use those cards effectively. But it does mean that sample size needs to be higher than ever.
Yes, for sure. It's very different from, for example, last year's meta, where we had these decks like Togwaggle Druid, Shadowwalk Shaman, that had like not really any random outcomes. It was just consistently the same all the time. While it's kind of a different game, because there's just different skill sets to both things. And right now we have a lot of random generation, and you kind of have to manage to play around that. And sometimes it's a bit stupid how volatile, especially when the decks are just so strong.
Yes.
But yeah, it's just very different, and it's a different skill set. It's definitely super hard to maneuver around it, though.
It is indeed. As jumping into the start of this game, Alutemu going with, again, carrying on with his just tempoing out game plan. The recently buffed unexpected results. I've had a pretty rocky relationship with this card, in which you saw me trying to build unexpected results spell damage tempo mage on day 1 of the patch, and lose about 10 stars in an hour. It did not go great.
I do remember that, Derek. It did not go great. It's a good summary. But yeah,
It's going better for Alutemu though.
It's a okay card, and here we again see that. I mean, he picked it from the magic trick, right? And we again see that Flurry just has very limited early game removal, and that makes Alutemu very possible to just play his cards.
Yeah.
And it not getting dealt with. And you'll see that good utilization of the Frostbolt here, getting to clear off the Hedge Clan flag that Flurry sideboarded.
Very powerful turn available to Flurry should he decide to take it. We can see a kind of repeat of last game, significantly less powerful, I guess, in terms of the Edwin, but still pretty good if he wanted to go for it this turn. But do you think he saves it for the Spirit of the Shark next turn? Or the turn after even? Although I guess this play does actually set up for a powerful Edwin next turn, because he can bounce the Edwin back with the Waggle pick for a 1 mana more powerful Edwin.
Yes. Again though, this 3-2 is pushing a lot.
It is putting a lot of damage through.
I would either consider as Fleur to just prep the Eviscerate, but at the same time he just wants to set up for this big Edwin. But this,
you prep that turn.
no. You probably don't, but I see.
It's tempting.
He's gonna get into some trouble here because he just doesn't have any reactive stuff, and if he goes tall with 1 minion, he just ends up like hitting Edwins into mirror images,
which he's going to struggle to clear with only 1 backstab and no SI7 agents in this deck.
Correct. Yeah, that's basically the situation here. It's just a bit of a struggle to get through the 2 health minions.
Yeah, which I think is why I am not super fond of Flurry's sideboard. Like, I think his main deck is very much on the money, especially given that Alutemu has been playing a lot of mage recently, so Walk the Plank primary seems like a pretty good way to counter that very well. I think the cards he's switching out in his secondary deck is a little bit suspect though, because like it's not like it would only be good in this game. You can pretty much expect SI7 agent to be good in a good amount of games versus mage, I think.
He's just I don't know. He just leaves himself vulnerable to a bit of a different game plan from the mage.
Yeah.
Which is a bit of the weakness when you include all of these cards like Walk the Plank and Sap in general, anyways, because you just have less ways to deal with the small stuff and early aggression from mage. Because even though Rogue is a pretty fast deck, like it doesn't really have too much early game, and when you even cut more early game and the reactive stuff, you just leave yourself a bit weak sometimes to pressure.
Flurry here with, I don't know, a slightly weird Edwin turn. Like, not going for the prep there is... I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about that, because what is the prep doing for the next few turns? He has very few draws that make prep good again, right? And it could have just been +2/+2 on Edwin.
Saving it for the second prep.
Ah, yes, of course. Because it was recently nerfed, it means you're losing less value by going for the prep.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe just saying that this is a good enough Edwin, basically. That doesn't need it to be any more. There's definitely potential for the prep. You can get the Togwaggle, he can get the Sap, the Betrayal,
but like
the Walk.
Yeah. I guess it's the prep or the Sap, because like Togwaggle, he still has to get lackey cards first as well, which seems like a pretty unlikely series of cards to draw.
So, again, Alutemu just not deciding to Frostbolt this Edwin. He just wants to save it for the potential burn, and I don't blame him at all for that. I think that is very good recognition of the situation right here. And Flurry being able to both play the Shark and the Sea Giant this turn is actually incredibly big for him.
Yeah, it's super big here. But even just being able to
Oh,
go
but
Life
the
Drinker
draw.
next turn is huge. That draw of the Mana Cyclone, though, is insane.
It's so good. It's actually so good, yeah. It's insane.
10 out of 10.
11 out of 10. But yeah. He's just spreading white hair, taking advantage of the mirror images to play around the betrayals. Just
Yep.
placing stuff around a bit everywhere, you know, and then picks up more freeze. And
that's insane. He's just killing Flurry. Flurry's just dead.
but Flurry just doesn't have any reactive stuff now, so he is.
I mean, I was going to say a few turns ago that Alutemu, despite having a lot of board control, probably doesn't get the lethal over the next few turns. But he just is. He's just going to win.
They're just nothing reactive. It just loses.
It's Life Drinker, Step Life Drinker, which does heal 12.
But it doesn't solve the problem right here.
It does not solve the
which
problem.
is just freezes into more burn.
So it keeps him alive, but it's not even like the old rogues where you could hit Myra's Unstable Element as the god draw to pull you back from any situation. What can he draw off the top?
Yeah. Again, both these games we're seeing the exact scenario I was talking about with this type of sideboard where the mage just goes wide. And we just don't have anything efficient to deal with that. It was pretty fortunate for him, I guess, to get the blizzards, but he could have also just gotten burn.
Yeah. I mean,
And
there were so many good cards.
There
right?
was a lot of good stuff that he could have gotten. Like
Blizzard wasn't even the best because obviously Fireball just wins the game on the spot.
Frostball wins the game on the spot. The game was basically just over, and we just basically saw the weakness of Flurry Stroke twice there. Yeah, that's it.
There we go. Thumbs up from Alutemu. I'm glad he got the win on that one. I have to say. I think that the way he built his rogue deck, his mage deck, is pretty innovative because I've never seen his list before with no Ziliacs, no Sandbinders, Luna's Pocket Galaxy, as well as the Questing Adventurers, which we've seen be very powerful. We saw from Tom60229 in the top 8 of the Vegas Tour, Masters Tour event over the weekend, sideboarding in the 2 copies of Questing Adventurer that were huge in so many games we saw on stream from him in the mirrors. I think it's a pretty cool version of the deck. And from Flurry, like you said, his list looking a little bit weak, suspect against the rogue.
Especially like in these small sample size games we had there in the 2 games. It was unfortunate for him that he turned out to be weak against the early aggression, and Alutemu managed to find ways to get the early aggression. And Alutemu wanna eat 1 score now, looking basically in prime position to qualify for the playoffs. So good on him.
Very good on him. I think it's very well deserved. Mage is a deck that is not easy to play at all. We can both attest to. And if Hunter Ace says you're playing well, you're probably doing something right.
Yeah, I liked how Alutemu played in general there. It was a really good recognition of different positions and also just general game plan versus different type of road builds.
Yes, I think so too. But that means we're all done with that match. Our last match of the day, 5th and final, coming up. It is going to be Glory up against Tyler. Our first match of Group B, I believe, as opposed to Division A. Don't go anywhere. This is going to be a very, very good one indeed. Another Mage versus Rogue, so we're going to get to see if it can shake out any differently right after this.
Dalaran will be ours! Once we land, you know what to do! No we don't. You didn't tell us to play it. I didn't think I had to. It's perfectly obvious. Bank! I am to be robbing the bank! I take henchmen for vault smashing and shiny stealing! Plan is obvious! It's a start, yes, but...
You won't get a single coin unless you take care of the city's guards. Let's rip open Violet Hole and unleash the prisoners on the city. That'll keep the guards busy.
Certainly, but that's not...
No! First, we must sow chaos in the streets.
I got rockets. Anyone need rockets? Try to see the big picture. Shiny, shiny, shiny.
We have to break their will before we can loot, you fool!
Please, everyone, please. Let's strap some rockets to the city. Oh, big candle. And then we just take the whole shebang wherever we want. Yes! Finally, you're exactly right.
Seriously?
That's dumb.
Ah, weak candle. Just wait till second gear kicks in. It's just like I said. We're going to take Dalarot for all that it's got. It's a genius plan. It's simple. It should have been obvious. And absolutely nothing will go wrong.
So, genius. How do we land?
Welcome back to Grandmasters for the Asia Pacific region. We're almost done here for Asia Pacific before we send you over to Europe for our next set of matches for the day, where we have another caster shake-up, similar to Hunter Ace joining me here. I believe it's Lorinda and Gallon, I think, casting EU. All the usual suspects are away to Admirable's wedding, to which we wish many happy returns, and I hope he has a lovely wedding.
Unfortunately, we didn't get invited.
We didn't get invited, yes. So we're putting you on blast on camera, Admirable, all right? You're called out. But we get the honor of casting some fantastic matches in Asia Pacific here. Glory up against Tyler is going to be our final match of the day. And it's another Mage versus Rogue, like we saw last time. And if you would like to borrow my deck list for Glory, it might look a little bit different to what we saw last time.
Yeah, this is more like just standard mage we've seen recently, with no special tech inclusions like the questing adventures and the Luna's Pocket Galaxy.
Yeah.
Just running overall, what I would say is just the strongest mage cards right now. Nothing too special. He has the hedge towards the warrior with Antonidas in the deck, and he has the double Sea Giant hedge towards the mirror. And it's just
standard.
Very, very standard, very good build.
I mean, this is pretty much the exact list that we were looking at, or very similar to the list that we were looking at building together, kind of behind-the-scenes spoilers for Hunter Ace's prep for GM. We were looking at Mage, right? And this is the list that I've been playing.
Oh, this is just one card of the deck I brought to Vegas first.
Right, exactly, so, yeah, with the Twilight Drake that you had in there, I believe.
Yes, it's basically the same, and it's super close between the Twilight Drake and the Sea Giant. It just depends a bit what matchup you're hedging for and what you expect of your opponents. So it's just very standard and a very safe bring for the mage in general if you're a bit unsure about what you're going to face and want to be solid all over the place.
Yeah, I think it's very, very respectable. And up against Tyler's Vendetta Package Rogue, a little bit different to what we saw from Flurry in the last series. And it looks, I mean, to be honest, a very standard Water Rogue. We're seeing two of the most vanilla builds of these archetypes going up against each other. Sea Giant at the top end, obviously, we've seen that can be pretty good against the Mage. I mean, it wasn't very good in the last game because obviously Alutem have got all the freezes to shut down the Giant anyway. But I think this list looks pretty reasonable against the Mage in the first game.
Yeah, this is, again, just an incredibly standard deck. I think we saw the exact same list brought in week 2. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's incredibly standard and nothing too special with it. Also with the classic Mage and Warrior sidebars.
Yeah.
So, and also very standard sidebars. So, really just the same we've been seeing multiple of the weeks. Yeah.
So we won't call it an outdated deck list, we'll call it vintage. It's old school, this deck list from Tyler.
It's not really old school, but it's what we've been seeing the previous weeks. And we see that both players still like the decks.
Yes.
So it will be interesting to see how it pans out, because again, it's a very very interesting matchups. A lot of different opinions on how the matchup actually goes, and yeah, we'll see how it turns out in this game. We saw that in last game, Alutemu managed to find a lot of different options on how to play the matchup, and it really rewarded him. And we'll see if Glory manages to do the same.
As you may notice there, if you are a regular Tyler viewer, he's not in his usual accommodation. He stuck around after the Masters Tour event in Las Vegas. I believe he tweeted out a picture earlier with him, Oskaka, and Sho, a real blast from the past, chilling by the pool.
Yeah, and as far as I know, it's very late in Vegas right now.
I mean, we actually, I'm gonna Google this now, because we were kind of curious what is the time in Vegas right now. To which the answer is 5:30 in the morning.
It is 5:30 in the morning.
So it could be very early, but knowing Tyler, I'm gonna guess it's very late.
It might be very
late.
So yeah, we'll see.
We will see. As we've got a kind of interesting couple of starting hands here. Glory on the coin, which is pretty nice for him, because otherwise he would be looking very miserable against an early Edwin. But his hand, dare I say, is insane.
This is what I like to call fire, this hand. And yeah, it's really good. And I think that he has a decision here to make, how he wants to play out the hand. And I would have probably done exactly the same. He's just going to slow play it a bit. Tyler having all the backstabs and the SIs and such, and the Vendetta, he actually has a lot of answers to the Sorcerer Apprentice. So just slow playing a bit is very nice.
Luna, not bad.
Very good.
Pretty good there. It's a 3-mana 2/4 at the very least, but I mean, Vendetta probably doesn't slide over because he draws another card. But either way, this could be pretty good.
Oh, and he's deciding to go off already. Yeah, basically what it does there is just filling his hand. And then potentially the next turn he can play the Giant.
Oh, this is going to be a lot of very cheap.
I wasn't able to think about this play too much.
He played it too quick. I mean, it's reasonable, right? Even if it's not like the absolute optimal way to play it, this is a very powerful turn he's done.
There's a very strong idea here. It was just, you just did it very quick, so I wasn't able to think about how bad it is to just not do it.
Like, should he have gone for the AI this turn and then more explosion next turn?
Maybe, yeah. That's what he could have done, right? I mean, he got extremely punished by Tyler having the...
He did.
Like, very punished. Because now, what Tyler... Like,
this was the absolute nightmare.
Basically, what Tyler did now is just generate a tempo of
yes.
your opponent's tempo, which is something you can do with the backstabs. So, I think it was a pretty close turn, and it's a very reasonable decision to make from Glory. I wouldn't have done that fast.
But like, it's difficult because obviously when we're saying he got punished for this play, that doesn't mean he made the wrong play. It just means in this instance it didn't work out. But it was, I think, more likely for him, if he just played the AI on that turn, he's met with Hench Clan Burglar on turn 4, which then is just more pressure on the board, more things he has to fight back against. So I think him going for it there was very reasonable because it did arguably shut down the Hench Clan Burglar.
Yeah, it was way better against the non-reactive hands from Tyler. It was insanely good. It was just specifically versus the backstabs and the really just backstabs. It was
just backstabs and everything.
I don't think it was anything that was not backstabs. I think Edwin wasn't necessarily the bad thing. I think just the backstabs was the problem there. And one backstab kind of enabled a lot of good plays for Tyler there. So it was pretty sad to see that.
Glory left in a pretty tricky situation where, I mean, we could just see another Mountain Giant, which is probably what he's leaning towards, but throwing down the second one without a Conjurer's Calling always feels pretty sad as the mage, especially when it can just die on board if it needs to.
Yeah.
Probably has to do it though.
Yeah, the spells he picked up were all very poor.
Very bad.
Interesting scenario is that if Tyler decides to tank another Mountain Giant now, Glory could go into Freeze Mage mode and set up this 4-turn Pyroblast lethal.
That's true. I mean, even just attack, freeze, attack
is not
is
a
like,
very
that
good
gets
pickup.
pretty close to lethal.
It's not a very. It's okay. You can play that fair like. But then you get a new card, so it's not that good. Oh, the backstab. It's insane.
Draws a card,
Yeah,
gets the
draw-
giant closer to dying.
0 mana.
That seems pretty good.
0 mana, deal 2 damage, draw a card.
I'd play that.
Behold the tools of
Draw
creation.
miscreant. That draws more cards.
Okay, this is actually insane. This Luna was
Behold
ridiculous.
the tools of
And draw
creation.
Kobold Lackeys that can kill the giant. Or you just want to draw more
Is
cards?
he not going for that?
Behold
That
the
felt pretty good,
tools
right?
Of creation.
I mean, if he's happy, if he's happy trading that,
Yeah, I think it's happy trading. Yeah, when you're just slow playing. Now Glory doesn't have any giants anymore, so
the Shark into Kobold Lackey with the Shadow Step is potentially 12 burst damage as well that Tyler can throw down.
I think this is a super opposition now for Glory. All his threats are gone, and
Like, every
spells-
card in his hand is bad. Nothing does anything here, right?
What to do? What to
I mean, I'm not saying they're bad cards, but they're...
yeah,
They're not good right
they're
now.
bad in this situation without him having any pressure on board.
That was not a spicy take of Derek Brown saying that Sorcerer's Apprentice is a bad card.
Tyler was pretty fortunate getting this Luna in this
Yes.
game, though. That was insane. That was actually so good. Just drew a billion cards. That was pretty fortunate for him, but at the same time, he managed to do it pretty well there.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And I mean, I've got to say as well,
It's just a struggle now for Glory.
I'm not even convinced that Tyler made the right play there of not going for the double Kobold Lackey, because like he traded off the Edwin, which is like a lot of damage that he wants to keep attacking with, but I don't know. It works out really well for him either way.
It might be that he wants to play around a potential Sea Giant play.
Yes, that's true.
because
That's true.
That's felt like what he maybe lost to there.
Yeah. Good point.
Because that is like free Sea Giant plus Nova into Conch plus Nova. It's like a potential counter
yes.
push.
Yeah, yeah.
And if he's not able to play Sea Giant, or he was able to play Sea Giant, but he couldn't play it with the Nova.
Which is still a possibility for Glory, which is why we will very potentially see Tyler stick at 5 minions. Because that locks out Sea Giant plus Frost Nova. But he's not afraid of it, it would seem. Which is reasonable. It's like it's a pretty fringe
Well,
thing to
he
play
could
around.
still deal with it with the Spirit of the Shark, Kobolaki.
Oh, that's true. Well, he wouldn't have board space now, right?
Yes, he could Shadow Step.
Oh,
all of his
Shadow Step it.
minions.
Yeah, yeah. That's fair enough.
Oh, he could technically deal with it, so it's fine.
What to do? What to do?
I will show you fear.
This is Leroy. What's the secret? Do you remember?
Spellbender and I think splitting image. So nothing that stops him from
Tyler
going
is
for lethal.
board lucky himself. Dude,
And
I'm
this
a-
is something you
wait,
have to be
wait,
afraid
y-
of against Mage.
Yes, actually, I was actually wrong, but he couldn't actually deal with the giant. I was just wrong.
Wait, he could have gone like
No, he couldn't because
lackey one of his own minions.
No,
and
but
then-
that doesn't work. We just spawn him in and he's so kill him. This doesn't work. Yeah. Also, there's
Yeah, I
this.
guess.
I was just. Sorry, that's my bad. I was just not looking at the situation good enough. But yeah, he's basically just board locking himself quite a bit here. It's just.
It's scary. I mean, like,
I think he just loses now. I think he just lost.
how? What does
He
Glory
can't do anything.
What does Glory do? I mean, he just wins in the next couple turns, right? How does Glory kill
No,
him?
yes, no, he's just dead. Sorcerer Apprentice, Frost Nova, Banana Buffoon. He's actually, yeah, he's just dead. He just lost.
So was that a throw by Tyler? What could he have done differently if he hadn't played the Sea Giant?
I think that his general approach, he was in such a good position. There was no more giants.
Yeah.
No nothing. I think what he should have done was that he should have just not played all of these one drops.
Right.
I think that was just unnecessary. He had the Cyrus Cone in his hand. He had the Spirit of the Shark in his hand. He was super ahead.
He had a ton of burst damage as well.
Yes. And now he just gets Borlocked out of the game.
Because there's even a Pyroblast next turn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what should Tyler have done differently? Was it just playing the one drops then that lost him this game? Is that the potential way he loses it?
think so. I think he just was in perfect position and he should have just valued his board space.
I mean, he can do literally nothing except for equipping this.
I don't know.
Oh no, he can bounce a minion back.
Okay, bounce minion back like this. Okay, that's pretty smart. Could he actually survive then?
He can kill off the apprentice, which stops the pyroblast next turn, which means he is
Alive
at 1 after Banana Buffoon. I think.
Okay, that's pretty good of him to spot that though.
He's still board locked though.
I'm actually just a bit confused this game. I don't know what's happening. From Glory's perspective, how do you maximize your odds?
Well, he just goes Blitz, right?
He's just one off lethal there, by the way.
He is 1 off lethal. Actually, he needs to be a little bit careful, right? Because if he blizzards, that frees up board space.
That does freeze up board space, yeah.
Yeah, frees up board space.
And he could potentially die to Sarek's Crown into Leroy and also Leroy. Or a shadow,
like
or
Leroy,
a shadows that. Wait,
Leroy double Kobold like is
what is
really
the secret
close.
again?
I think it's splitting image.
Yeah, it's splitting image. You're correct. So shadows that would be lethal.
He never has lethal hit. Glory has no way to get lethal, right?
Well, he technically he could conch calling into charge, which will be lethal.
Fair enough. Bluegill Warriors, Corcoran Elites.
Oh, he goes for. Is that really lethal?
hand is too
Oh, he gets the taunt. Yeah,
That's got to be game.
it's interesting that he decides
That's
to go
huge.
for that. The research project before the Blizzard though. was that good?
My hand is too full.
I'm not sure. To be honest, I'm too much focusing on Tyler's face right now, which is
Yeah,
a
I didn't see
premium
it.
meme right there, waiting to happen.
Looks like Tyler is.
He's making a house
He's
and hiding
very
in it.
confused about how this game went wrong. It was in a prime position, and then things just went wrong.
I mean, that's what I was talking about, right? Because even though when I was mentioning when he played the Witchy Lackey, it played into Sea Giant Frost Nova, it wasn't only that. It was the board locking, right, which really messed him up there.
Yeah, and from Tyler's perspective, there he was in such a good position. He just had to play around the worst case scenario. Just get his high value threats out with the Spirit of the Shark,
Right.
Clan Burglar,
Or
the
just
Sarek's Crown.
keeping Edwin alive, right? Like by trading the Edwin instead of just playing out the lackeys, he had no high damage minions on board.
Choose soon.
I guess if he played the lackeys, that also went wider on the board. Anyway, so that was a little.
There
bit
was a
closer.
lot of things that happened this
Yeah,
game,
yeah.
Derek, and I cannot say that I'm very confident about like anything that was. But I think that in general, just versus this mage deck and like the board lock, the entire board locking thing is just a super scary
really
factor,
important.
especially when you're in super good position. He
Yeah.
played double giant. He didn't have any way besides Sea Giant to get counter pressure or the Frost Novas. So just wasting your board spaces could be super punishing a lot of the time. It's interesting, and I don't know. I would have to look back at the game to see
Yes.
exactly what is the correct answer, but I don't know.
It's really tough.
It was a very good position, and he suddenly was board locked, and his opponent just did whatever.
And that's one of the like the underrated but still very important aspects of Hearthstone is locking out a favorable game, right? Because winning in the early game or pulling yourself back in an unfavorable game is like more obvious that you've done something good. But when you kind of lose, put yourself in a less good position when you're miles ahead, that's something that's still super important to make sure you're up at the high win percentages.
Yes, for sure. And yeah, I don't know. It was an interesting game for sure. I'm actually, I'm
You're just
I'm
lost.
just confused. Yeah. So I have no clue how Mage got that win. So we'll go up to game 2 then. You think that players will sideboard? We see that it's kind of the same idea of sideboards this time around. Glory with the half-amp Scavenger sideboard, and Tyler with the same time of sideboard, but Fairy Dragons instead of the Hench Clown folks. And also, he didn't cut the SIs and the backsteps. So, okay. So he should be a bit better against the aggressive game plan.
Yeah, I think I like it a lot more from Tyler. It's kind of an interesting decision he went for, like you said, with the Fairy Dragons over the Hench Clan Thugs. Is there one that you prefer over the other versus Mage of Fairy Dragon versus Hench Clan Thug, or do they both kind of serve the same purpose?
It's a bit dependent on... It's just a bit dependent. I like the idea of what Tyler did though, with cutting the cable rats and then adding an additional 2-drop instead of the cable rat. I think that makes a lot of sense. So in this situation, I guess I like the Fairy Dragon, but I can't tell from a lot of experience from the rogue side, so I'm just not very sure. I think it's a very reasonable cut from Tyler. I think it's pretty close.
I think so too. And as we play tennis with Glory's deck list, I'm going to steal it back for a quick glance. Like you said, the Snip Snap, Halftime Scavenger, Rabble Bouncers. You're not really a big fan of Rabble Bouncers, so I hear.
I mean, I did bring Rabble Bouncers to Vegas, but I don't think they're particularly amazing or anything. I think that they're very, like, Rogue could often just play around it, especially when they run the Blink Fox list, and it's just a card that sticks in your hand a lot of the time, which is very annoying, and it could get a bit clunky. I also sometimes with the Mage, it just doesn't feel that good to cyber, because you always just cyber at good cards. So just running the Rabble Bouncers instead of what he, for example, has here with the Luna and the Sea Giant, for example.
Those are really good cards.
Those are really good cards in the deck, so it's just super expensive to sideboard cards. And they're not like particularly amazing, they're just a bit situational and sometimes very good. So there's positives and negatives with it, and I'm not like super fan, but I don't mind it either.
I mean, we saw how good Luna is not only for Mage, but also for the Rogue. On the other side for Tyler, the Luna was insane there, as we did just get confirmation that they are switching over to the decks that we expected. The anti-Mage is being played by Tyler up against the Mage. The anti-Rogue is being played by Glory up against the Rogue. It makes a lot of sense. As we've been talking about here, we've got them ready now. The Snip Snap, Halftime Scavenger, and Rabble Bouncer for Glory. I mean, those all make sense. It really is just the cards he's taking out that are some question marks for me. Like, why isn't he taking out Frost Nova? Like, isn't Frost Nova a slightly less good card against Rogue, or is it still just good? I mean, I guess we saw how good it was there.
It's pretty good versus Rogue, I would say. It's just Frost Nova is just a super good card against deck that wants to go wide, and together with the Giants and there's a lot of potential combo turns in general. Just having a big turn and then your opponent just not respecting the trait and then you just Nova them.
Yeah.
It kind of just locks out the game. I just think it's a super strong card in general. So I don't like cutting the Novas, but I don't really like cutting a lot of the cards that we are cutting either. So, but there's just, the deck is just so many good cards.
It's too good.
It's too good. It's just,
you want everything.
I want everything, yeah. So just feels a bit bad in general, and he has to cut something. So he decides to cut. Some of the cards are not that influential in the matchups, but cards that make the deck good in general. So I like the way he cybered it, but I don't think the deck gets that much better. But I think that the Halftime Scavengers, for example, is super important and are very good in the matchup.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that from Alutemu in the previous game, where the Halftime Scavengers, even though they were killed by the Doomsayer, were still pretty insane up against the Rogue in that series. I see what you mean, though. It is just super, super tough with the Mage, where you don't want to get rid of any of the cards. I mean, you were running into the same problem when you were looking at both Masters Tour and Vegas and GM this week. But for the Rogue on the other side, I think it's a little bit easier in terms of what is cut, as we can take a look at the Rogue now. For Tyler, Evil Cable Rat, Life Drinker, Waggle Pick, and Ziliax going out for him here in favor of Betrayal, Fairy Dragon, Sap, and Walk the Plank. It's pretty similar, in all honesty, to Flurry that we saw in the previous game in terms of what's going in. It's really just what's going out that I think I like a little bit more from Tyler.
Yeah, Tyler deciding to, rather than cutting a lot of the early game removal and the potential to like just kill a bunch of small minions, which is in general a tactic you want to do a lot in the matchup when Tyler runs the Walk the Planks and the Betrayals and such. He decides to cut the Evil Cable Rats, which is a very good card, but at the same time not that strong when you're already running 2 Novices and now 2 Fairy Dragons. So it makes a lot of sense from Tyler's side. Also, he decides to cut 1 Life Drinker, 1 Waggle Pick to have the threat of both of them still, which I like a bit.
Yeah, I think I like it too. I mean, we've seen that the Burst is kind of weird against Rogue, because the Life Drinker, being able to have something that goes over the top of Grave Horrors can be pretty useful up against the Mage when you have limited Burst that goes over the top of it. But I think what we're seeing is that now that the deck is often cutting Eviscerates as well, you generally just don't really go for the over-the-top burn plan. You just try and hit them loads in the mid-game, kill off the 1 Mountain Giant they play, and stop them from playing taunts in the first place.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's going to be a close one, as Tyler, I think if he's going to be able to take this series, it's not only the sideboard that's going to bring him back in, it's going to have to be playing a little bit better in terms of locking, not board locking himself, because we've seen time and time again against Mage. It's a super underrated thing that you really have to consider. I know that this is something that I personally saw, and I don't want to put him on blast too much here, but for Fino in a Master Tour event where he was not playing up to his usual scratch, I think, in terms of how well he usually plays, and board space was a big part of that for him in the Mage Mirror.
Yeah, and the Mage Mirror is a very big thing. It rarely happens in the Rogue Mage matchup, I would say, but it's just something to be aware of in general when it comes to the Mage matchups. And if you're facing a good Mage player, he's very aware of the possibility of actually doing something like that. And
Tyler rubbing his hands together there as he sees his mulligan. I think I would as well. That looks pretty good to me.
yeah, he has all the cards that he takes for the matchup.
Pretty much. He did keep the Walk the Plank off the mulligan as his only card. He drew both the Fairy Dragons off the top. Do you like keeping Walk the Plank? Because it's a little bit reactive, I think. You'd rather find your own proactive, aggressive options.
No.
You don't like the
I don't think I like it. I don't think I like it.
Yeah.
I think that it's not the most important thing.
Yeah.
It's a side, like the situations that Walk the Plank is good in is when you're already ahead and you get to go further ahead. So in the situation where he's in now, it's extremely good because it just keeps up the developing pressure for him. But I don't really like this as a single keep, especially on the coin where your opponent is super likely to go for aggressive game plan rather than the giant game plan.
Very good point.
So yeah, I would not keep it. But Tyler does decide to keep it. He's also deciding to not trade any of the Sorcerer Apprentice, which...
This is dangerous, dude. Like, even just, what, Snip Snap? Do you ever Evocation Cyclone as well?
It's...
It puts a 2/2 on board, which is pretty good.
You could get pretty punished by it, but... There's also so much value in pushing the free. I don't know, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It's pretty close, but sometimes he could get very punished. He gets very rewarded here by the outcome, but I'm not sure. Also, you see, walk the plank when your opponent is just going very, very fast.
Yeah, it's completely nothing here.
It's literally nothing.
That card in his hand literally doesn't exist.
He kind of has two cards in his hand, and it doesn't exist. It did draw the backstab, though. If it didn't draw the backstab,
I mean,
he had nothing.
Right. So what does he do? Does he trade backstab Edwin? That sounds awful.
Yeah, I think he does that. He just wants to keep on developing the pressure now. But now we see, again, this tech inclusion for the Mage. The half-time Scavenger on 4.
It's pretty
being
nuts.
impossible for the Rogue to react with because of it being a spell stealth minion into the Conch Calling.
Even with the 1 damage as well.
Incredibly strong.
Yeah, he gets the value trade. I mean, he doesn't get the armor off the overkill, but I think he's pretty fine with that.
It's just very, very strong. And now he gets the value trade into the Evocation Cyclone also.
Ooh.
Well, we could potentially make his Edwin bigger.
Yeah.
But then his hand is...
very bad.
Yes. But his hand is very bad. I mean, if it doesn't draw anything good from Novice, his hand is also very bad.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe it's worth it. I feel that...
Because I mean,
I feel like we just don't beat the Conch Calling if we don't do it ever, right?
Right. And like, 6/6 is such a weird spot because the Glory really doesn't want to conjure his calling it as a 6/6, but it's still doing a lot of damage.
No, we'd never Conch Calling it. That's
yeah.
for sure. I think it might just... We're probably just forced to make it a 6/6. Just... If we don't make it a 6/6, we're just too weak to Conch Calling. It's just way too much tempo. I don't think we get back. I don't think we ever get back now.
Yeah. Like nothing has enough tempo to pull him back if he doesn't make it a 6/6. Wow.
He does not make it a 6, and he also holds onto the Novice. So he's playing for the shark draw. Rather than, is there anything on 2 we can draw now? Also, you could also just say that maybe your opponent doesn't have the Conch Calling.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just the
Yeah.
Okay, Daro. Okay.
With the ping first, even turning his hero power into basically gaining 3 armor rather than dealing 1 damage. I like that a lot.
Oh, we didn't want to tempo the Cyclone here.
That is a bit surprising to me. Like, is he really expecting to get more than 2 spells soon?
I'm surprised too, Derek. I think I would have.
It doesn't make Sea Giant playable for Tyler. I think that was just a pretty easy Cyclone.
I would have Cyclone.
Yeah.
I mean, at least my initial thought would have told me to Cyclone there. And Tyler has to use the trail for only tempo now.
This is miserable for Tyler. Like, considering he had a hand that was
And
good.
And Glory just gets another value train into Conch Calling.
Yup. That's insane.
Again! The aggressive game plan versus the rogue sideboard. Just getting wins.
And I think we can clearly see for Tyler, I mean, again, you don't want to be results-oriented, but I think by saying that Walk the Plank was the wrong keep here, it's not being that results-oriented, because how likely was it for Glory to go pass, pass, AI, Giant? Like, you don't mulligan for that.
You can't even do that. You can't even do that. You have to go pass, pass, AI, Banana Buffoon, then Giant.
Right, okay, yeah. So it's super slow.
At that point, he's probably going to do the combo play anyways. He's going to try to combo the Giant. I mean, this game isn't over yet either, so Tyler still has, but it's super hard for him because now he's just playing entirely reactive.
I mean, that's a pretty good top deck for the future, but there's literally no way to combo it, even as you see the
Give two
the eager
random
underling
friendly.
there.
It's actually.
Did you know what that card did? All honesty.
Wait. Weren't we supposed to play the Cyclone because of that card?
Oh yeah,
Probably, right?
that's true. Yeah, you're probably right actually. That would have been nuts actually. I don't know. I mean, I think the Cyclone should have come down like 2 turns ago, but
I would have played the Cyclone 2 turns ago too, but I don't know.
yeah. I mean, like the upside could be huge if he picks up an AI and he goes for a big Cyclone turn. Then it's nuts, obviously. Well, this could happen.
Yeah, but now we just have. No. Now we just have less. We're just getting less and less value every turn.
He is
Cyclone.
getting less and less.
It's just less and less tempo. I think he's playing a bit too greedy with his Cyclone here. I think he's undervaluing how important the tempo is and just getting additional cards. The main spells aren't always unplayable, so it could be potentially helping with just doing powerful stuff every turn.
Tyler with a pretty miserable situation where he has to just tank the 4 into the Rabble Bouncer, and he knows that the Eager Underling is there waiting to buff with a sweet trade into the
Yeah, and now I expect
into the Miscreant.
now Glory even gets the full value of the whatever the form on that card is called.
The Eager Underling, Casper.
The Eager Underling. Yeah, he gets full value of it
Because Tyler poked it last turn.
Yes. I mean, in worst case, he could have pinged himself.
That's the Galaxy Brain play.
Yep. Yeah, I think he's just gonna. You could go Evocation, Mana Cyclone, Sea Giant. Right?
Yes. That looks pretty good to me. I mean, only getting 1 spell off each is pretty sad, obviously, but the Giant's too important, right? Like, what is Glory expecting to happen? Like, 2 spells is the maximum he gets from here on in, right? Like, maybe with a Ray of Frost off the top, he can get 3. He is slow playing this game so hard.
I can't find a good reason not to play the Giant over
Right.
the Rebel, to be honest.
You just want you want pressure. You want to end the game as quick as possible. Like Betrayal? No.
He used Betrayal.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
used both
Yeah, yeah,
Betrayal
he's
and
used-
Walk
he's
the
used
Plank.
Betrayal.
So the
Yeah,
only
yeah.
answer is Zap. And versus Zap, it's better to play the Giant because it's most
It's
likely going to
cheaper.
be. Yeah, it's cheaper.
I agree.
So I think this was a wrong decision by him.
I mean, I think this game overall has actually just been pretty sloppy on both sides, to be honest. I think there's a lot of things that both players could have done to improve their chances.
Yeah, maybe. And I don't know. Gloria just played it super slow, to be honest.
Right.
Like, imagine if Tyler would have picked up a Togwaggle.
Exactly. Togwaggle's the out right here.
Yeah. Then we would have.
That would have been insane.
I actually think Tyler is just supposed to step one of these lackeys at this point.
Because Togwaggle's his only out.
Yeah.
I mean, he got pretty unlucky in not bouncing either of them with the Waggle pick there.
I don't think we win without the Togwaggle top deck. Into having a lackey on it.
What else does he have? I mean, like, there's no one top deck other than that draws a card, right? I mean, that draws
I think
enough
I think
cards.
it's the only thing that wins, right? Isn't it? Maybe there's a Henchcon burger out, so he can go for that too. But is it better though than the Togwaggle out?
So this is kind of an interesting decision now for Glory, where he could go Barrier, Evocation, Cyclone, and then play the Sea Giant as well, but that does leave up one of the lackeys.
If we save the Cyclone all the other turns, we're saving the Cyclone this turn also to ping one of the minions. Okay.
Fair enough. I think that's right. I mean,
Yes.
it locks out the out of Togwaggle.
Yes,
Right?
this is just the correct play. I also think so. I like this a lot. And now Tyler can't play the Togwaggle, and he's also just just doesn't have any very good cards.
I mean, does he have any outs at this point? It has to be like Shark off the top into Engineer the next turn, but then he's just taking too much damage.
Yeah. Very, very bad position for Tyler here. It's looking like Glory's slow game plan is panning out, but he didn't really have a slow game plan from the beginning. He just got ahead, played it super fast in the beginning, and just took some risk there, and he just kind of slow pitted in towards the end, which I think was slightly suboptimal, because I think that he left himself a bit vulnerable to a potential Togwaggle and a comeback from Tyler like that. I don't think there was too much negative things about just fast playing the Cyclone a bit more and just getting an additional threat and some additional spells in your hand. But what Glory did also works out. So I think Tyler is trying to figure out how that went.
I mean, what is the outright? Like, looking at his deck, it has to be off Henge Clan Burglar, I think, at this point.
Yes.
Like, Burglar is his only out, and I'm not even sure what he could hit.
I'm not even sure.
Twisting Nether or something? Like, that's too slow.
Yeah, he's potentially, he could get like he needs to kill the Giant next turn is what he's realizing or saying here.
As we see Glory's plan coming together. The 4-spell Cyclone Casper. This is what he's been working towards. Pog.
Yeah. And the 4th spell being the big spell.
He saw the lines, dude. He saw the lines.
Yeah. And
okay.
Tyler could potentially go for a Leroy into Miscreant, but he, as you can see on his facial expressions, he's kind of giving up. There's supposed to just still also no, there's not a still splitting you. No, this is the last game, but yeah, this is a barrier, and it doesn't even get anything here.
Yeah,
could you potentially get something?
Nothing that can save him there. I don't even think. Yeah, I mean, Armor Smith maybe, but I think even then it wasn't enough armor to save him.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And yeah, Glory locks down the victory. A super big victory for him because I believe this group is extremely just one-sided. Some players are doing very well and some players are doing very bad. So both of these players are, even though they're very good score, both of them, I think they're not like top of the group yet.
Right.
So it's gonna be extremely big win for Tyler and I mean for Glory, and very bad for Tyler that he takes this loss because Glory could be one of his biggest contenders for the 3rd or 2nd place.
Right, as I believe that Shaxi was on a 7-1 record at the top of Division B. Either way, Glory can put himself right up at the top after this week if things go his way in his other matches. And I think even though there were some slight qualms we had with how he was maximising his chances in that game, maybe playing a little bit slow and giving Tyler the out of Togwaggle for 1 or 2 turns, I think
it's just a small thing though.
It's small, yeah.
I'm not even sure. He had an idea behind the saving Cyclone, of course. I just think that personally I would have liked to see it play because I felt that the tempo and the potential space he could have gotten mattered more, and it just felt like he was just holding on to 2 cards the entire game for not very much value, and the tempo just mattered more in the specific situations. And I think he got everything like in general game plan very good, but yeah.
I think overall it showed good understanding there from Glory because he was up against a double Fairy Dragon starting hand from Tyler, and he was just by going the Sorcerer's Apprentice on 2 and then just curving out, he dealt with them pretty beautifully over those turns. There was little that Tyler could have done. As I believe we're ready to take a look at the results from today's matches. Some pretty back and forth games, a lot of 2-0s that were pretty one-sided. The Surrender vs Frosty game I think was one of the most interesting ones for me, outside of Surrender's blowout Edwin's in a couple of the games. There were a lot of really interesting lines that could have been taken there from both players.
Yeah, also, I mean, we clearly have low sample size, but we see some matchup panouts here being consistent. We have the rogue defeating the hunter twice,
Yeah.
and we have the mage defeating the rogue twice. So it's what we expected, kind of. But
So what we can deduce here is that mage is literally 100% versus rogue. Literally.
basically, that is just facts now.
I mean, it is in all seriousness, it's a real point of contention as to whether mage or rogue is favored, and there's a lot of very strong arguments on either side. But I think the way we're seeing it is that it not only is the opinion going to change, but the actual percentage is also going to change as the way players play mage changes, I think.
Yeah, I think that mage is just a deck that there's just so much you can do when it comes to how you play the game and how you learn the different matchups and the different decks. So I think that both Elitemu and Glory noticed this like super well, and it really showed off in their games and rewarded them with the victories.
It really did. And having taken a look at the results, we're going to look now at the standings to see how these matches affect the overall record for these players, mostly in Division A that we saw today. Alutemu moving up to 8-1. I mean, the only undefeated player left now is Fino, but he could be on the same score as Alutemu after his match later on in Europe. 8-1, super, super respectable. And I think we can agree, we saw why after his matches. I think his understanding of Mage overall was very, very strong.
Yes, I agree. Alutemu was a player that kind of went under the radar last year, but he was one of the top point earners.
Yes.
And he was, I believe, the best performing player in Japan. So it's just very, very strong performance overall, and it's really showing this year in the GM League that I think he's just playing stronger than most of his Asian competitors and getting rewarded for it.
Chonsu down on the bottom side, however, with the Mech Hunter going 0-2, I think it was the stats. I've got to be honest, I'm open to being persuaded otherwise, but I am still I'm still not convinced on Mech Hunter. I don't really see what it's trying to do in the meta. Maybe we'll see.
It's trying to win, Dirk.
Okay, well, it's trying to win. I'm trying to win at Hearthstone. It doesn't mean I'm very good at it. Yeah. We'll see. Perhaps it will change. Maybe it's just who knows? Like you say, even with the matches we've seen in GM over this whole thing, it's still a relatively small sample size.
Yes. If you, for example, compare it to Vegas, Vegas was 10 times more sample size than entire GM overall. So we still have a lot. We don't really have a lot of matchup data here. And I know a lot of the players are practicing a ton and playing the matchups way more than they actually play them in GM, right? And getting totally different views than you necessarily get from just watching GM, where you just have seeing the matchup twice every time. And a lot of things can happen when it's only 2 games. And sometimes that factors in a lot. And you can see that people just disagree on matchups and stuff because people have different preparation. And it's just very volatile. And with low sample size, stuff like that can happen.
It can indeed, especially as we've said, the difference both in terms of the cards that are generated and just the play style can really affect it in general, because there's no one true percentage as to how the matchup shakes out. It all depends on how the players are playing it and all that other good stuff that goes with it. But with that done, it means we're pretty much done for today. A lot of Division A matches today we got to see. Right up at the top, Alutemu, right down at the bottom, Chonsu, and everyone in the middle as well. Tomorrow, we're mostly going to be taking a look at Division B. Players like Blood Trail, Samuel Sao, Patra, and Dawn we're going to be taking a good look at. There you go, buddy. Have a peep at that.
Thank you.
A lot of good matches. Like you said,
looking great. A lot of rogues tomorrow. We also see that Rivius is going to take on a rogue then with the Shaman deck.
That's right. The Shaman deck that we saw right at the start of the day kind of getting stomped by the Warrior from Tom. So maybe he's finding a matchup that he's looking a little bit more forward to there. But I think it's going to be a good one because Division B, very polarized. A lot of high win percentages, a lot of low win percentages at the bottom. So I think this could be the start of players in the middle really go up to the top and in contention for playoffs with those players in the middle like Blood
We're getting
Trail.
closer and closer to finish now. So getting Ws are just crucial if you want the top 3 playoff spot, which is the only thing that people care about here. It's no relegations, and top 3 playoffs is basically everything.
That's what you're playing for, which means we are done here. We're going to send you over to Europe now. I want to thank you, Casper, for joining me for the first day on the casting desk. Do you have any closing thoughts?
It was a pleasure casting with Derek Brown, and I'll can't wait for tomorrow.
I cannot wait for tomorrow either. It's been a great day today. Can't wait for more. There'll be plenty more APAC tomorrow. But first of all, we're going to go to Europe and find out what happens there. After this break, they will be right here. Thanks for watching.